Welcome everyone. Today is Saturday. It's December 12th. I'm Frosty and this is MogTalk. If this is your first time joining us, MogTalk is a show based on a variety of different discussions on Final Fantasy XIV and hopes to make you a more informed player and a better player, whether you're a Sproutling or you're farming Savage. Today we have with us two wonderful guests. Both have been on the show before, giving us great discussions. First, I'll introduce one who has appeared the least so far, a very great player whom heals and leads his raid group, which is currently working on A4S, and actually he's currently the artist who created MogTalk's most recent layout and logo. From my own server, actually, please welcome Blizzana back with us. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. That was one hell of an introduction. Hey
Yeah,
guys, hey chat.
of course. I feel like you're worthy of it, all right? Semi. Okay.
Thanks.
And back with us again, who also leads his own raid group, currently gearing up for some hardcore 3.2 content, from what I'm hearing. Welcome back, ShamanArkk, everyone. Good to see you here again, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's hardcore-ish, hardcore-ish.
Okay.
I've been told by a lot of people I'm still mid-core since I
Yeah.
started recruiting.
I mean, hardcore's really turned into a definition that you have to go 18 hours a week
Something like that. I don't
to
know.
be hardcore now.
I was like, I'm doing 12 hours a week now. It's like, well, that's mid-core. I'm like, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, you put the core at the end, you're kind of saying you're taking things seriously. I don't know. I guess that works.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's been going great though. Lots of recruiting, remaking our group, relearning fights. It's been fun.
yeah. Well, that is awesome that you're actually finding people who are going to jump into that too. I didn't know there was that many players that wanted to go in and be at that level, but I guess there are.
hmm
So,
Retired hardcore players love it.
retired hardcore players dropping down to the mid-hardcore, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so tonight I'm trying out kind of a new format for our discussion. It's kind of the way we've been leading the show for a while. I'm very excited because this is the first show of the topic, which I plan to continue for quite a while in different subjects, which is simply how to be a better player overall. And this is something that could affect anyone, whether you're new to the game or you've been playing for a while and you still haven't figured out how to pump out a little bit more DPS. A lot of experienced players really probably know what we're talking about tonight, but hopefully you'll gain some tips throughout the show as we go a little bit more into detail about it. One of the biggest complaints I get from people who come from other MMOs is the GCD timer being so long. But honestly, you should be doing a lot more than just using your weapon skills and going off the GCD timer. One of the most important aspects of the game, in the game, and trying to be a good player is learning what off global cooldowns, they mean. What do they do for you? And actually making the most out of them. A lot of players do not use oGCDs correctly. I'm going to trip over that a couple of times probably. Going from GCD to oGCD. So we'll just say off globals. We'll do that. This usually results in a loss of DPS and makes you many, many times less effective in your role as a player. So tonight, we'll discuss the off globals in detail, what they mean, and how to use them, and how people are actually failing at using them. After that, we'll continue on to other subjects, which the guests here have actually brought that I feel like you guys might want to listen to figure out, maybe how to be a better player. So, all right. So let's jump into this. Sorry for a long intro. I just want to make sure that I went through that because this OGCDs really do make or break a player. I mean, do you guys agree with that?
It's an important part of it for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. If you
for
don't
sure.
use OGCDs, you're not playing the game. Basically, I don't think you're playing the game. You can be, but your effective level is at least halved, right?
Yeah, about a third or something like that.
Oh,
It depends on the
close
class,
to it.
though. It depends on the class.
Yeah, different classes have it a little bit differently. But let's jump into it real quick. And first thing I want to do is just ask you guys why you think OGCDs really matter. And we'll start with you, Ark, if you want to go first.
Sure. You kind of touched on it, but just like very generally, um, it's just actions that you do in between your global cooldown, right? So if you're basically doing nothing in between your GCD, um, it's just like you're missing. It's almost like missing your own, another GCD altogether. That's why Frosty was probably saying something like you're missing half your potential, right? You don't always have
Yeah.
enough global to use between there, but it's just you're expected to put actions in between certain abilities, and you're supposed to also set up abilities in a certain way. Like for example, classes that use instant cast procs that trigger the GCD, or abilities that trigger the GCD and are instant cast. You're supposed to sometimes time those so you can fit in off global cooldowns and things like that. And again, the best, like being very general, but it could be DPS, it could be healing output, it could be a lot of things that you're gaining from this, but you're basically just gaining extra actions in between all your GCDs, and you're just it lowers how active of a player you are if you're not doing it this way. If you're using your off GCDs, and when your global cooldown hasn't been triggered yet, you're just wasting many more actions you could be doing and taking less control of your class than what you're currently doing. So
Yeah.
that's my general input on it. But yeah.
Blizz, do you have any input you want to go into with off global cooldowns?
Yeah, just kind of to piggyback off of Ark, coming from kind of a healer standpoint, a lot of the time I see people, like especially scholars and astros early on when I started playing, not realize that there's certain ways, especially with Astro, with like Essential Dignity, that if you hit your off global, your Essential Dignity fast enough, you can still get the full benefit of it, even if you heal before it. Um, and so there's a lot of benefits that go into playing and using your off globals and using them properly. I mean, depending on latency, you can even double up on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing too, is I see a lot of people either blow all their cooldowns before they can get their entire opener because they don't weave them in, or minus Machinist. I'm not gonna hate on you too much,
Right.
but I've seen other classes do it, and it's like, no, what, like, why are you doing this? They're meant to go between certain skills at certain times if you've worked out a rotation. Um, on top of that, I see a lot of people like recently have just come and said flat out like something like gear scoggles a loss of DPS, stuff like this, and it's like, why? It's off the global, and all of them are free. It's free damage. Like, why wouldn't you use it? Like,
Right.
that's like, I don't understand that. So
Yeah. I mean, it's
globals are needed.
Yeah,
yeah.
like one thing, like the kind of talking about the people not aware of how powerful they are. Recently, in 3.1, Pally's got the shield swipe off the global cooldown, and a lot of people there were a lot of people who understood why that was so good when they turned shield swipe into an off global. A lot of people are like, "Whoa, they nerfed the damage of this ability," and like
No.
and I use this ability all the time, and now it's crappy. Why would I ever use it? I'm like, do you know how big of a buff that is? And also, it's so fun personally,
Yeah.
but yeah, like that's a huge buff. That's like an extra 150 potency between like every 15 seconds, just flat out without changing anything else about how the class works. It's just
Mm-hmm.
extra damage as long as
Yeah.
you have it triggered. And I was like, whoa, that's so big, that's so fun and so cool. And people were like what did they nerf them for, or why did they make it worse? And I was like, what?
Yeah. I mean, the fact is, like, when it's in this situation with paladins, basically when you have it in a global cooldown instead of off global cooldown, and just so people kind of know, a lot of different. And I'm not sure if this is 100% sure, but I know this is sure for paladins. You have two different kind of ability. Well, you have two different kinds of buttons you can click:
Obfuscate.
weapon skills and abilities, right?
Yeah.
Abilities are always basically an off global cooldown, from my knowledge, and then weapon skills are your global cooldowns. At least that's how it works with machinists for sure. I don't know if they kind of term those differently for other classes. Uh, and so that includes everything. That includes your abilities that you use to do a little bit extra damage, and the ones that buff your damage, the ones that prevent you from taking damage. For example, if paladins can now, instead of using an ability to do a little bit of extra damage, they get a lot of damage in between doing their normal damage, like you said.
Because they get a
Uh,
whole nother action.
yeah, that's three
Yeah.
seconds more action That or well, however
It's
long you're
yeah,
two point
it's like
five maybe.
yeah, it's like in the same time you do one GCD, you got or sorry, one action and one GCD, you got two actions.
Mhm.
One was probably less than the other one. Some cooldowns, some GCDs are better than GCDs, honestly.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you just get your doubling, tripling your actions in the same amount of time frame.
yeah,
Yeah. And you know, going back on what Ark said about the Pally thing, like I remember running my Pally, and that was one of the most annoying things was the fact that it was not off the global for the longest time on Shield Swipe. And on top of that, they put the hate generation on it as well, which was one of the biggest things that I felt they
That's
needed it.
yeah,
You
it was
know,
very helpful.
because you use it so much just to conserve TP, you know, early on. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
um,
I mean,
granted,
before,
a lot of people still can't hold aggro, but that's another story.
yeah,
That's something else. Yeah.
I mean, before it was just mathematically, it was a little bit better to use that every time it came up. Now there's no doubt.
Yep.
You use
It's
it if it's up. As soon as you see it, that highlight or whatever, you hit the button and you go.
I
Right?
remember way back when in 2.0 when I was still just learning Pally, because it was one of my first 50s, and I got Spirits Within, and I was just like, man, this skill sucks. Why would I ever use this skill? This is before I understood, because I came from WoW, and this is before I understood like you can't just macro all your off globals together or anything like that. And I didn't even realize that there were abilities like that that were just off globals, because it wouldn't have made as much sense in other games. And yeah, and I was just like, this skill sucks. It's like, it's lower potency than most of my other attacks, blah blah blah. And then I'm like, oh wait, I can use this ability after another ability without the global cooldown triggering. This is the most amazing skill ever. As I
Yeah.
started to figure it out and it clicked with me. Yeah.
And then
It's a lot
every
of fun
Pally
too.
in the game forgot that it was a silence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's another thing.
hey,
Is like people.
bards have the same. A lot of classes have that
Yeah,
problem. Jugulate, and I can't remember what the bard one's called, but yeah,
yeah, it's pretty rough.
Blend Arrow.
yeah,
Uh,
Blunt Arrow, that's it. Yeah.
And so, I mean, a lot of people will get in the habit of just incorporate and blank shot. By the way, too, blank shot is in there, and
The
it's
knockback
an
one?
off global cooldown. It knocks things back, and that's why it's
Yeah.
all like there's a big conversation about it. But
Oh, you can knock that monster away. I didn't know that. Sorry
no, it's
about that.
positive, guys. I'm doing this helps me do extra damage, but it's not because it's extra damage. It helps you because it reduces damage because I push it back forward. Don't worry about that. It
No,
just
sure.
helps. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so there's basically when you're pressing your abilities and you have that global cooldown going, you should see which ones are not on cooldown or not on that timer. Those are ones you can use to improve your DPS, and not just your DPS, but the situation of the raid. For example, tanks who don't use certain abilities because they're tiny cooldowns that don't really do much for them. You can go in there, and if there's no need for you to use that cooldown at any point within the time that cooldown exists for that 90 seconds, use it at the beginning of the fight, and then just keep using it until you need to wait until a certain point of the fight to have it up. Or at least that's kind of my theory with tanking, is that you just use all of your abilities to get the most out of them. Um,
It, you're probably referring to awareness, aren't you, or something like that?
yeah, awareness,
Yeah,
definitely.
there's some good places for awareness and like bulwark and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get into awareness and how garbage of a skill it is, but
Well,
whatever.
you can
It
still.
has its situations.
It has the situations, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we ran into a lot of things like in AS3 where it's kind of funny. Like we had our tanks popping awareness in certain places because we have them drop their tank stance, and we were having problems with them getting auto crit, and it worked for a little while, and then there was a string of pulls where awareness would fall off, and immediately they'd get crit slapped, and it was like,
I was doing
all
its job
right,
up until then.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I'm going to be honest. When you do a big AoE pull, you pop awareness,
Yeah.
that is absolutely fabulous. It reduces
we're
so much damage because of all those mobs that are hitting you. None of them are going to be crits, and it's completely predictable what damage
Yeah,
you're taking.
I've seen some good use of it. It was just because you were talking about how maybe people won't use it too often. It's like you probably should use that skill often, especially when the situation Frosty just said.
Yeah, it's the
But
best, one of the best AoE.
It caps the amount of damage you can take. So when you're not able to be crit because you've dropped your tank stance or whatever, you definitely want to have awareness up.
Yeah. But anyways, we're getting back into a tank conversation right now.
Yeah. So one thing I want to point out, it's a little bit about tanks, but any class really, but is just that we're not only talking about DPS cooldowns, and I did mention some like healer ones as well, but also you shouldn't be using your tanking cooldowns, your defensive cooldowns, or any kind of defensive cooldowns, or your utility cooldowns like Mantra or Goad and stuff like that. Those are all off global cooldowns abilities, and you have to figure out slots to fit those in because it's DPS loss to try. It's a DPS loss. Yeah, that's really what it is. DPS loss or healing output loss if you're trying to use those abilities, like on the fly, or you're kind of fumbling to target things or something like that, and you lose a GCD from it. These are still off the global cooldown abilities. So there's a lot of them. Most utility cooldowns, most defensive cooldowns are off the global cooldown. I can't really think of too many there on the GCD, but yeah, so make sure also though you think about the slots you want to fit those in. Make sure to trigger your GCD first before you toss a goat on someone or something like that. Don't take the hit. Now these are like very minor things, but it all adds up if you don't do it with every single ability that you have.
Yeah, and I mean, learning to practice that, and just eventually get to that point to be like, oh well, I can hit these abilities while this one is on cooldown. Find one ability that you can press to make the situation better in the end. And some of those, don't have big global cooldowns. One of the ones, there's some abilities that are absolutely useless to use between your global cooldowns, and they're extremely situational. For example, if you're on a boss that can't be slowed, there's no point to leg graze as a machinist on a boss. Like, you can weave it in there, but it's not going to do anything. And so you got to also just kind of look at some of these abilities and see what they're doing, but most of them you'll be able to make a use out of. When you're hitting buttons and you see ones that you can kind of press in between those global cooldowns, figure out why you're not pressing it. Figure out what you could do if you did press it, and if it makes a difference, 90% of those abilities will help your raiding experience for your raid and for you. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
And I was just gonna say, like, when in doubt, if you don't have things pre-planned into off GCD slots, just always trigger GCD first before you're gonna use any off the cooldown action, unless you're worried. And this is something we'll get into. Unless you're worried about animation lock and it's like a silence, and you absolutely can't be in animation lock when you're gonna hit the silence. Sometimes that's okay, while you're still kind of learning the timing of how the animation locks on the certain GC that you were planning to use. So let's use the example of Blunt Arrow, right? So like in general, yes, trigger GCD, then use off GCD ability. Even in the case of where you're actually trying to do a silence, and actually trying to legitimately use that as a silence, you still want to trigger your GCD to get that to be like the most optimal for your damage stuff. However, if you're worried about animation lock, or you struggle with animation lock, or there's even latency in there, you can waste the GCD to get the silence in. Just be kind of aware of that kind of stuff. But outside of that, when you're not trying to do something mechanically, trigger the GCD and then use an off global cooldown if you're not really sure. Always when you're thinking about using an off global cooldown, just trigger the GCD, and that'll help a lot for sure.
Yeah, and I mean that just goes back to the weaving factor, and latency plays a whole big role in it. But like when I play my machinist, and I don't remember if you do it, Frosty, but I double up because I can.
It depends. Yeah, there's certain situations you can double up and some that you can't.
Yeah, and so with latency too, you have to kind of play it. Do you want to do it one at a time, or do you feel like you can make both of them within that GCD? And it takes a little bit of practice and stuff to figure that out. But basically every class with off globals, though, if you're not using your buffs, or you're not using like your jumps as a dragoon, or like mug or not mug, jugulate, or any of those for like ninja or whatever, you're losing considerable damage that you should be putting out, and especially as like machinist or dragoon, where a lot of your skills are off the global.
Yeah.
I mean that's half your damage gone.
Yeah,
Ninjutsu, we don't like that's.
Yeah, Ninjutsu's
they have a lot off.
Oh man,
Mudras. There's a ton. Like ninjas are like the kings of off global cooldowns because they have so many because of ninjutsu all the time. Yeah, that's and those are hard to fit in too because ninjas have a 2-second GCD usually around that mark anyway. So
yeah, it's hard for me to kind of. I've been learning ninja a little bit and how to kind of fit those mudras in there. It's definitely one that takes a lot of work with oGCDs.
Yeah, that's where you learn it.
Yeah, and kind of what we're talking about too with fitting multiple ones in there. The whole goal with using your off global cooldowns is when you use them, it doesn't interrupt your global cooldowns. So you want to use a global cooldown, and if you're about to get another global cooldown up, most likely you don't want to hit that off global cooldown because that's going to delay the amount of time you have for your next global cooldown. It stops it and it tries to do this action before it goes back to the other action. And so you gotta have to figure out where does this fit in. For example, with Machinist, you have to cast Split Shot, and so you're casting that, and then you have time for one oGCD without interrupting your next ability. But if you have one without a cast, you have time for two off global cooldowns that you can use before your next one. So it really depends on your class and where you can use it and everything else. But let's go into that a little bit more. How do people succeed with using off global cooldowns? What are some things that they need to actually be looking out for? And I want to actually start with you, Blizz, if that's all right. What's something that people need to know about how to optimize their global cooldowns or off global cooldowns properly?
Honestly, I think the big part of it is hitting them as they come up, but making sure that you're weaving them inside your globals. Especially, I see it a lot with people in like their openers, and why people complain so much about DPS loss or this or that, because they don't get them up under certain buffs and stuff, which are also off the global. One of the biggest things that I struggled with when I was first learning Machinist was trying to get both my Silence and Gauze Barrel back under that, and I figured out that I needed to hit a Gauze Barrel earlier on to get it right at the end of Wildfire, and that brought Wildfire up quite a bit. So it's really trying to figure out, okay, I have so much time for my buffs, I need to get those up, but I also, kind of like with Bard, you want to clip your dots in your opener. I don't know if they still do it at like 7 seconds or whatever to Iron Jaws, but I know before it was like 6-7 seconds. You want to re-put up your dots. That way you have a full fresh dot duration under all those buffs still. It's just little things like that that you need to figure out. And how to fit in your globals to make those, or your off globals to make those work.
All right. Ark, what's some suggestions you could give about optimizing?
Yeah. So, we kind of touched on animation lock a little bit, which is something that, like, once you kind of understand, like, once we get the point across, if you weren't as aware about how off globals worked in the past, then the next thing is to understand, and you do now, the next thing is to understand is animation lock, because some off globals, like, kind of take more time to take up more time between GCD slots, and there's some combinations that allow you to cancel animation lock, which I think is a little advanced and kind of tricky to pull off anyways with latency. So I'm not going to get into that too much, because I think that's a little bit, that's like, you're going pretty far. Yeah. So if you want to experiment with that, I'd say go ahead and look that stuff up. I'm not going to try and explain that in detail. But so yeah, like potion, that's a big one.
Yeah,
so when I tell people to practice an opener or anything like that, it's like I don't want to see my DPS with potion or anything like that, or I don't want to waste money on potions. I'm like, get the cheapest potion of any potion you can think of in the entire game. That's the cheapest to get, and you use that in your practice, in your rotation, because that it's not trivial using potions. I every time in my group I say use potions every time you get a chance to, so you can practice using them, because that GCD, that off GCD ability, or I call it an ability, it pretty much is.
Yeah. Definitely is.
It's tricky to fit in, and most people clip their GCD with it very often, and then it's really bad, because that's like using a DPS boosting ability and then missing some time of using it right afterwards. And you don't want potion to cause you a damage loss, because you're probably using it to boost your damage at the time you use it. So yeah, use any kind of potion. Practice that animation lock that comes along with it, because you can usually only fit a potion in between a GCD.
You can barely fit. It doesn't. Most of the time, it doesn't even actually fit in between them.
So hey, so that's a good one. That's a really important one to practice. The other one about animation lock that you have to be very careful with, because it can come in with the ninjas. This has happened to me before. This is usually the main way that I'll ever bunny hat outside of lag, if I'm having a lag. and it's when I do a three-step mudra or ninjutsu, and then I'm trying to, I'm still animation locked from the last mudra I did, and I think I hit ninjutsu. And again, I'm trying so hard not to clip that GCD or not to be in that GCD so long.
Yeah.
Did not hit the suit on, or anything like that. Then use my ability right after because I'm basically expecting
That's
all to go off.
the worst
Funny,
feeling.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, and then
I've
you
done it so many
trick them.
times.
Yes, and that's because of the animation lock. And sometimes, especially for that one, sometimes you do have to let the GCD. And it's really hard not to have the GCD clipped on that one, but it's because
It's
of the
impossible.
animation.
I've never been able not to clip a GCD with a 3
Yeah.
mudra.
Sometimes things are just going great, and I noticed that it went well. But it's still probably a couple of seconds. But yeah, like that's where you notice it. Really, like that's one of the ways I notice it the most is like terrible because you just did like all those things. You clipped your GCD and then you got nothing out of it in the end, and then your group lost trick attack and stuff like that. But yeah,
Oh yeah,
um,
that is literally the worst feeling you can have is missing a
so
trick attack.
yeah. So
Yeah.
the classes, every class has a unique, like everything reacts a little bit differently and interacts between them differently. Some of them are very quick animation locks. I can't really go over the entire list of them. This information is out there.
Hmm.
But for your specific class, I would definitely when you're looking at guides, make sure to pay attention to those animation locks and make sure to understand why a lot of guides say you fit this cooldown, this off GCD in this slot because animation lock or something, or you fit these two
Yeah.
together because this in this order because it cancels it. And there's a lot of other things going on there too. But just understand that to always take into consideration the animation lock for
Yeah.
sure.
And like you were saying, there's certain situations. It depends on your. I would say just focus on your job or role, and what they have and what cancels what, and try to just figure that out before you start applying it to other jobs. But it applies to every job out there. There's some way to use your off global cooldowns properly, and canceling those animation locks helps a lot. Paladins have ways to do it, I believe. I know ninjas have a way to do it. It's just different ways to improve your stuff, and you also have to take, for example, dragoons. There's all jokes everywhere about them dying all the
Oh,
time.
that one, yes.
And so when they
Yeah.
jump, it's an animation. And so you're stuck there. You can't move, you can't do anything. And then the mechanic happens and you're dead because you couldn't move fast enough. And so you have to kind of take that into account when you're going through and you're becoming the master dragoon out there. You're becoming a swagoon. Swagoon is probably how I should say it, but I like saying swagoon. And then you're out there and you're pressing that button, but you forgot a mechanic's coming up and you're going to die because you press something that locked you into your spot. And so you have to kind of take those things into consideration when you're learning this. And it's hard to get used to at first, but that's why I like this game. It has depth in there with using your abilities, with thinking about these different things to be a better player. And it sets people apart from the people who are mediocre, not really good players, from really good players. There's a easy divide there. And if you know these things, you're a good player. And I like being a good player. I like feeling like I know what I'm doing and I'm advanced at what I'm doing. And I can't feel that in a lot of other games because it's all cookie cutter stuff that anyone can do and set up a macro for.
Oh, man.
But we'll go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was gonna just say that I had my GCD down below a second in WoW point where I was like shooting lightning bolts at like 0.9 seconds. Like a lightning bolt. It felt it was just a machine gun. It's like if I'm doing anything in between it, it's like macros.
Yeah.
Well, and talking about other games, I mean that was one of the hardest things for me coming over to this game. Like I played 11 a little bit, but a lot of my time after that was spent in SWTOR. Played it since beta all the way up until like 2.5 years into the game, and their GCD was 1.5 instead of the 2.5.
Right.
So coming over it really seemed super slow. And it was something of an adjustment. Excuse me, an adjustment period.
Yeah.
To really hone that down. And if anybody's coming from another game who has a lower global cooldown, that's kind of the breathing room for those off globals. And also to kind of touch on what Ark said about the potions, I see so many people with potions try to double up with an off global potion.
It's the worst
Do
thing
not
you can
do it.
Yeah.
It is
It's
the
the
worst thing ever. You're already going to cut into your GCD slightly probably
Yeah.
with your potion.
You're missing literally an entire action, probably, if you're
Yeah.
doing that. An entire whole ability is being
Yeah.
lost.
And I would say basically one of the best ways to ensure that you're not going to hit the next global cooldown is when you're hitting a global cooldown and you're getting that, as soon as you hit it, go ahead and start spamming the other one to make it happen. Spam the off global cooldown to queue it up, have it happen. If you have time for another one, do another one, and then go back. And while it's your global cooldown's ticking to come back up, be spamming that button and hoping it's going. That screws up with Ninja. That's one thing I need to make sure you guys know is that you gotta be careful with Ninja doing that because how ninjutsu works, it's kind of funky how it works in between the global cooldowns and making sure you get it right. I have to sit there and tell myself, all right, this is my 2 seconds to focus just on ninjutsu. I'm not going to do anything else. I'll make sure I got that correct. Go back to my global cooldowns because otherwise I'm going to mess it up, and I do it all the time.
Well, and with the animation lock too, like since 3.0, I see a lot of monks. They don't realize that now since they can just use their shoulder tackle all the time, that it doesn't have a slight animation lock to it. And it does. I've seen so many people get hit by stuff just because I use it at a certain place right there. And so I mean it's more about like and I'll get into it later when I get into, consistency and practice and stuff, but that's something that people really just need to when there's new skills, new patches, changes to skills and stuff that they need to really play it out and see
Yeah.
what's gonna affect them.
Yeah, focus on look at your job, go to target dummy, learn the animation locks of all your abilities, kind of get used to it. You can kind of get used to it just as long as you play. This is why it's important to play your main a lot if you want to be really good at it, right? Try
Yeah.
not to class pivot too often because you need to keep up on this stuff. It takes a while to kind of get used to
Yeah.
it. So, if you really want to master it, you got to play it a lot. You got to try it out. You got to be really into this kind of stuff. For sure. One thing I kind of say this a lot, but one thing that's great about off global cooldowns, especially in this game, because the GCD is so long, is again talking about the machine gun kind of atmosphere in other games. You never see any of the animations in those other games because you're just going like you're just like your character's like I don't know, it's like having a seizure or something.
Yeah.
And that's something that's different about this game that's really cool is that despite it feels just as fast because you're doing actions in between, but all the animations, like some do get clipped and you cut them off on purpose and stuff like that, but most of the animations, you look really cool in combat in this game. Yeah, you're doing like all these cool combos in between and you can kind of put different abilities in between and you look like you're really, I don't know,
Yeah.
you get to see all the animations of the characters. I like that a lot.
No, I have a bone to pick since you mentioned that.
Okay.
As a scholar, and you see it sometimes on a summoner as well, going from your bio to miasma to bio. Bio likes the stutter step. I don't know why. You can hit arrow and it doesn't do anything as far as stutter stepping the off global, but for whatever reason, I feel like my character sometimes, because I've looked at it, does this little like thing with their book, like they're like throwing their fist at it for whatever reason before they throw the actual dot. And I mean, it doesn't cut into the global or anything, but it's very annoying as far as the animation goes.
Yeah. I never look at my character, so I have no clue what's ever going on.
Well, people do when you record videos and stuff. Sometimes I
That's
look
true.
at like videos I've recorded, like kill videos. I'm like, oh my gosh, Ninja looks so cool. I'm like, wait, I play Ninja all the time. How do I not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what a lot of people, one of the reasons they like playing Warrior so much is because they go in and the feel of hitting that fail cleave
Yeah.
is amazing to them because it sounds perfect. How their animation goes when they actually use it just feels right to them. And then you see big numbers pop up. and you're like,
Very
"Whoa."
warrior, very
Yeah.
warrior. Yes.
So they did a really good job there, and they have a lot of those that actually match with those classes. For example, Ninja, when you start using your off-global cooldowns, your ninjutsus, and you're moving, the ninja's moving fast. It's just going back and forth, going
Yeah, you
crazy.
cut things
You
up.
feel
Yeah.
like a ninja.
You do your opener on a mob, and you just see its health go as you're like just like ripping it apart. Yeah, that's one of the most satisfying things.
Yeah,
Well, and one of the things that I hate about Ninja, and it goes back to you saying, watching videos and stuff, is like the overhead view of a ninja or just watching yourself absolutely sucks. You go and watch a video of a ninja from the side, it is the most epic looking battle scene
I didn't
ever.
know what Shadowfang looked like. for so long, and I'm like, holy crap, Shadowfang is amazing looking. And I saw it in the ability trailer for 3.0, and I thought it was a new skill. I didn't even know that was Shadowfang. They used Shadowfang, and I was like, whoa, what is this new skill where I do this like crazy flip, and it looks like there's like 5 ninjas, and it's like, whoa, that's Shadowfang? Because it only looks good from the side. Otherwise, it
Yeah.
just looks like I kind of do a flip from my view.
I never knew that either. That's now
Yeah,
I know.
look at Shadowfang from the side. It's amazing looking.
Yeah,
Side view. If anyone's
it's
hasn't seen that
it's a
before,
lot more than just like a front cartwheel or whatever the
it's
hell it
really
is.
cool looking.
Okay. Well, are there any other tips you want to give people before we move into kind of the failing parts of using off global cooldowns?
Don't
Uh,
fail.
don't fail.
Yeah, I think that if we miss, there's a lot to talk about, so we're just kind of promoting, like
Yeah.
looking into this. So yeah, I think questions would probably be the best. If there's
Yeah.
any.
So what
yeah.
I would say is everyone in the chat right now that and Cryo's in there collecting questions. If you guys have questions about off global cooldowns or anything else that we might have missed or discussed that you feel like we should discuss, let Cryo know in the form of a question, so he'll pick it up, and then we'll get back to it at the end of the show. And I definitely want to dive into this deeper if you guys have more questions about it. But there's a couple points, at least one major point about failing using off global cooldowns that I feel we need to talk about. That a lot of people kind of get in the habit of using. And you both kind of gave me one major point, and I figure I'll let you guys run into that. And Ark, I'll let you start this one off. What's some major factors into failing using off global cooldowns?
Macros.
Macros. Okay.
Because people come from other. We're talking about games where off global cooldowns don't have things like animation locks, and don't have their own. But basically, don't have animation locks. So you can fit like 6 abilities together at the same time. Like in WoW, you put your trinket proc 1, trinket proc 2, this ability, this ability, this ability, and then they all kind of activate at the same time. You just kind of maybe you have to hit it a couple of times, because I guess there's maybe a slight animation lock, but still, like usually you can activate all of them at the same time and stuff like that. So a lot of people, yes, we're talking about like the Bard 2.0 guys too. Those
Yeah.
are terrible. Yes, there's a lot of things that are bad about macros. Any action will cancel a macro. Like if you try to use 2 macros together, they cancel each other out, so they won't proceed. So that's if you're using wait commands and stuff like that in between. They actually they almost have like their own timer between each step you take. That's like every second I'm only able to do one thing. So that's why you have to put waits in there. But it's like I said, it's sitting around a second. So it's like, despite the fact you could fit in maybe 2 off GCDs and a GCD together, a macro would maybe only allow you to do one of those things.
Yeah.
That's why manuals are important. That's why there are no Mudra macros out there, because you need to activate those things so quickly. You'd get nowhere with that kind of stuff. Yes, macros are very, very slow. They pretty much almost change everything into a GCD. They almost like create a GCD for every single ability you try to put in. So where macros are good are when they do one thing. And exclusively one thing quickly. If you ever see my stream when I'm doing Ninja, I have like 1 billion macros, targeting macros for things like Goad and Shadewalker and Smokescreen. They are like permanently hard coded to always target the same person in my party frame. So it's like healer number 7, Smokescreen. So I just have to activate that one skill, and then I can do that between a GCD, because all it is picking a target for me and doing the off global cooldown ability, and then I smoke screened my white mage basically, where my white mage is my party frame. Goad is the same thing. It's like, do I want to goad party member 2 or 3 without targeting them, kind of thing.
Right.
It's like, that's my melee DPS or my bard, or do I want to target party member 5 or 6, which is my tanks? Which tank do I want to go? And stuff like that. Then I never have to target them or worry about targeting them by any means. And that's where macros can come in handy. Same with Shadewalker. I have macros for that. I have target of target macros for Shadewalker. A lot of people use target of target macros for Virus. Sorry, not Virus. Virus and Eye for an Eye. It just depends who the target is
Right.
when you're using those abilities. But so that's where it's good. So like macros that are like an ability and a target, that's where you can kind of get those things in, and you can still get them in between GCDs. I would still eat the macros are slow, so you're probably if you're using a macro, you're still probably limiting yourself to 1 off global cooldown in between a GCD. So you got to be careful. But
Okay. Bliss.
yeah, watch out macros.
I'm gonna be a little hateful because I
Do
hate
it.
macros for combat.
Altogether?
Yeah, all together. Like Goad, I can understand because Goad's a pain in the ass to try to click through your party and then try to find that one person. You're losing so much. If you can do a mouse over, that's fine. Or even like cover. Even though I don't understand why some tanks can't cover because it's like click on a name. You're not doing anything else but getting smacked in the face by the boss anyway, you know, and then cover them. But as far as I see a lot of scholars out there that macro like their pet abilities and stuff, they don't micromanage it. And I came from learning how to micromanage, and I've honestly tried to use macros, and it's terrible. I had my tanks used to use macros for like provoke and stuff, and it would set them back to where they wouldn't provoke it in time, or the provoke wouldn't go off because they hit another skill in between. And so I'm really biased when it comes to that, and I absolutely hate macros, at least in this game, because they're not well made for combat. Um, like I just don't like it. I can't really. I would never go to somebody and be like, "Hey, use a macro for this." It's like
Yeah.
I couldn't see myself doing that.
Yeah, there's definitely you're always probably taking a small performance hit when you use a macro, regardless what you're using it for. It's always better to kind of learn how to use the ability, like on the fly, like be able to get good at the targeting keys and stuff like that, like how to target party members specifically without. It's just you have to be careful with the melee DPS. It's very hard because you might lose auto attacks when you do that, even in that quick auto switch of targeting. That's why I like the macros that make it so I don't change target. I just use an ability on player X, which I can't do without a macro. At least I don't know of a way of doing that without a macro. So I like not having to change my targets. So that's pretty much as far as I'll ever say macros are good, is basically so you don't have to change targets. But
Yeah.
I do understand what you're saying about everything else. And utility cooldowns are usually okay because you can use the utility cooldowns, maybe when you're not attacking things, and the
Well,
FTC doesn't matter as much.
I'll give you an example of one of the things that I hated, and this was pre 3.0, is a lot of bards would macro their heavy shot and their bloodletter.
Yeah, that's
Stop
bad.
doing it. I hate
That's
that
too
shit so
action.
much. It's
Again,
too
it's two
action.
actions.
Yeah.
No, not okay. Not okay. Yeah.
You know, it really irritated me that they were doing that. And it's like, okay, so you don't want to hit one extra button. Um, it's just,
That's
that's,
that's something that came from WoW as well, though. You'd have like
yeah.
the key that you spam, and if you have an action that it's like basically use this whenever it's up, like a proc or something like that, you could have one key do that for you. It still wasn't as good as you doing it for real, even in that game, but it worked decently without for some players. It would make you play better if you were bad at it already. So that again, that's where
So
that
you're
comes from.
encouraging being a bad player.
No, I didn't say that, but
Uh,
I was saying that from other games, anyways. But hey, if it's like if it's like really bad and then just bad, and that like might as well just go to just bad. But that's
yeah.
again, that's talking about WoW and other games that allow that. In this game, it's just there's just that would be a really bad thing to do. That you're really hindering your performance on that class.
So I'll let you know my experience with macros so far has been almost nothing. I would see a macro, I'm like, no. I would use it for text-based things. If I need to repeatedly say something real quick, I'll do it. Or, I try to avoid using them because I know they're not perfect. They're a little bit goofy. You know how much more amazing I feel not using macros? I feel like I'm actually in there and I'm being a super badass player. But when it comes to using the macros because it's completely required, there's something. Is he going? Because yeah, there we go. I gotcha. Macros that turn off your lights automatically. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah. So macros, I don't use them because I feel like if I can figure out how to not use them, it's better. But then again, I got into the situation with playing Warrior recently, and I said I have all these abilities that do the same thing, and if I'm in a different stance, but it's a different ability, and I need it to shorten my hotbar. So when I hit Deliverance or I hit Defiance, it changed which ability showed on my hotbar. That's where I've gone with macros, and that's as far as I'll take it, probably.
That's still iffy.
It's
For the record,
iffy, but
yeah,
it's
that's probably
I
where
don't
some
have room.
utility stuff. But yeah, I understand. I understand.
I,
Well, I mean, there's things like The only macro I would really use for my scholar would be switching in between pets and stuff, but and switching the bars there. But
Mm,
um, I
that's a
don't
good
know
one, yeah.
the problem that I have it is I don't know if you watch and I'll bring up what Wyvern King in chat said too, is that I'm a PC player, so I can really micromanage my pet. Whereas, like in Wyvern King said, on a controller, sometimes you're forced to have to macro things in order to get them to play halfway decently. And I think that's
Hmm.
the fallback to playing an MMO on a cross hotbar. But we make things work, whatever. Um, but the thing is that I see, and I don't know if you guys or the chat watches a lot of like Asian players or Japanese server players, but a lot of their healers have heals macroed, and I'm talking PC players, where they're taking everything out of what they're using their pet utilities for, and I really I really don't understand it. Maybe it's something that we don't know about and they do, or maybe it's just because they're sitting on top of their server and so they don't really have too many issues with it. But it's it's something that really irritates me to see, especially on healers, to macro stuff.
I bet healers could get away with it. I don't say it's the best thing to do, but I think that if even if they're lowering their performance, they could get away with it for sure. They might do a little bit less damage, but you might not need that damage in a group, especially when you're like later in the tier or you've got some good gear. So
Yeah.
healers can, like people, a lot of people say that healers can get away with not having as much gear in a fight too, which is generally true. So it's kind of along the same lines. You're underperforming because you have less gear, or you're underperforming because you're using macros on a healer. Probably the class that could get away with it the most, but still try to avoid it at all costs. I mean, if there's that one thing that you need a macro for and you know that it lowers your performance a little bit, but it's much worse not to use the macro, go for it, but still try and strive to not do that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, and I'm guessing Blizzana, you don't use target of target macros for virus or eye for an eye or anything like that, right?
Nope,
No,
I put that on myself.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm only familiar with using those skills. I really like it, but that's pretty cool.
I used to use them, and I got to the point to where I can notice, and I've never had like real bad latency problems or anything else, unless it's just some kind of weird outage that I'm having or whatever. Um, but I've never um, I've never had such a problem with macros because I've played it in other games or used them in other games, and I got here and you could notice the slightest difference on activation and stuff using macros, and that was one of the things that absolutely turned me away from it in combat because um, a lot of stuff server side. So if there's something else going on, it could potentially push your stuff back, or
Yeah.
it could actually cancel it out, which we've had problems with, like I said earlier, with my tanks and provoking.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think we didn't touch on one of the most important things. I kind of said it, but I said it wrong, or I didn't really point it out, is that macros don't queue up other abilities. So if you're spamming a macro and it's like sitting at 0.3 seconds or anything like that, it's not going to activate until it's actually all the cooldowns are up or anything like that. You can't. So that's also kind of very important. Is that like you're like for a lot of cast or anything in general that are in the GCD, they will queue up so that they activate immediately, even if you were trying to click them before the cooldown was up and stuff like that. So that's another thing that you do miss out on macros. And one thing that I remember happening quite often. I don't know if people. I doubt people use Swiftcast raise macros anymore, or try. I'm sure they try to avoid it, but those failed pretty often. Like
yeah,
it's like you just started hard casting raise, and your Swiftcast went off, and you have Swiftcast on, and you're hard casting raise, and then or your Swiftcast goes up, but your raise didn't do anything, and then you just cast the spell, and like it's. Watch out for things like that. Yeah, again, one action. If you're thinking of a macro, really, truly strive for it to do only one thing at all. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remembered I used macros for calling out bin use.
that's
Uh,
oh yeah. Oh, text
yeah.
macros
well,
are
Yeah.
yeah, text
But
macros aren't that big of a deal,
because
but
they don't affect anything you're doing. And then if you use another macro, that's the thing. Is like if you're using a text macro and then you have other macros going on, macros cancel each other
yeah.
out. So if you have macros for calling stuff out, which is probably the best use of macros. And then you have macros all across your hotbar for whatever reason. Um,
Yeah,
and
you're
you're
pretty much
canceling out all your text macros is like, yeah.
yeah. Uh, but yeah, okay. So what are some other things that you guys can maybe think of to why players are failing using off global cooldowns? And I think we've already mentioned a little bit, but the biggest thing that really pops in my mind is people using off global cooldowns and delaying their global cooldowns. And I feel like we've touched on that enough, but did you guys want to dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, you can. You're not really going to know how to delay your off globals, be that buffs and whatever else. I mean, any kind of like damage off globals, you can, for the most part, just hit off as they come up. But sometimes you want to save cooldown. Say there's going to be a phase change, or the boss is going to leave for a second, or become invulnerable. You don't want to pop something, and waste 5-10 seconds on your blood for blood or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, you want maximum uptime, so sometimes you do have to push them back. I know, and I don't know if it's the same thing, Mark, and maybe you can touch on this with ninjas, but for the second trick attack, I know a lot of ninjas like to push their blood for blood back so that the second trick attack's under blood for blood as well. So I know that used to be a thing with ninjas. I don't know if that's ever changed, but um, there's certain things where you want to get certain skills under certain buffs, and you definitely need to push them back. But during content is really and practicing content is really the only way you're gonna understand how to do that, because a dummy parse isn't really gonna tell you too much, except for like with ninja, you need to push your blood for blood back here.
Well, I mean, I would say I would almost debate against that a little bit. I would only not use an off global cooldown as it's coming up for to have it, match up with another one if it's really close. Otherwise, basically, my thought process, and this is I could be completely wrong, but it's worked out pretty well for me. Say for example, blood for blood is 80 seconds, and trick attack is 60 seconds. So if I am going to that point to where trick attack's up, but I gotta wait another 30 seconds for blood, I'm gonna go ahead and use trick attack and then use blood for blood when it's up. And if it gets close to matching up, I'll line them up because it does stack damage and you get bigger bonuses out of it. But not using that and holding off is 30 seconds of lost cooldown time that you could use later on in the fight. And that's the only thing I would say against that is like I try to with machinist you line everything up you can. You have actually at least four 90-second cooldowns. One's an 80-second because it's blood for blood. That all kind of match up, and you want those huge wildfires, and that's why you line those up. But I've been kind of going in that whole thought process is to use them as much as possible to get the most effect out of them throughout the fight, especially in those fights where it's like 12 minutes long. And if you delay, let's say, a few cooldowns, and it adds up to 90 seconds worth of cooldown time that you haven't used, that's one whole cooldown you could have used. But I don't know. That's just my thought on it too. And
Yeah.
it's different for each fight because some fights you'll use it and you'll only use the cooldown for 5 seconds, and then it's ticking for 15 seconds in a transition phase, and that's kind of
Yeah,
bad too.
we're talking a little bit like GCDs. I mean, off GCDs are cooldowns, but we're also talking about cooldown usage in general, pretty much
Yeah.
at this point. Um, just touching on the trick attack thing, I mean, if ninjas are really trying to pad some meat, well, not even honestly, because if you hold off a trick attack, you're losing more trick attacks later on in the fight. But of course, don't trick attack on a mob that's about to jump up in the air. What I do delay is I delay like maybe my mudras, or because I delayed my trick attack for whatever reason in my opener, maybe my ninjutsu. Maybe my trick attack timer is sitting around like 12 seconds or 13 seconds. I may wait 5 seconds to cast Suton, so that I can like flexibly get that trick attack in, or there's less chance of me losing that trick attack, or so I just get a trick attack in sooner, like every minute, right? Which is really important for your raid DPS. So for stuff like that, definitely consider your raids DPS for sure. Talk to others, see how cooldowns line up. You always want to line up as many abilities and cooldowns as you can together, for sure. But it's very fight dependent, and it's very much like if you wait too long, you're overall losing your damage. So generally using unless, like what Frosty said, is unless they're really close together, You're safe to use them on cooldown as long as you know you get the full duration out of them. And then you can kind of experiment and figure out if saving them or lining them more up together if you wait longer works.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of variables to that. It's very fight dependent and it's very class dependent as well. So we could talk
Yeah.
about that for a really long time. And I don't actually have the knowledge about it for many classes, honestly. For
Yeah.
ninja, the cooldowns are very short, so it's hard for me to fail. Usually it's just get as many trick attacks in as I possibly can so that they get
Yeah.
the full duration off.
Yeah, of course. And I'm gonna kind of pick on you, Frosty, because
Do
you're a
it. Pick on me.
machinist, and I'm gonna pick on your class because
Yeah.
while you do have those short cooldowns, I absolutely hate how wildfire, reload, your rapid fire. I hate how though your actual machinist skills line up because
I
they
love
never
it.
line up the way that you need them to.
I
Uh,
I think they line up. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, the thing with it is like I really feel like I can always get like Blood for Blood, Internal Release, Hawk's Eye, and stuff to line up. You know, well, not Internal Release, Blood for Blood, Hawk's Eye, and Raging Strikes to line up. But I for the life of me, except for like I think every third rotation through or every third wildfire, I cannot get like reload to be there where I need it to be. And maybe that's just part of the class and I don't
Yeah.
play it enough. But it's certain things like that where I know a lot of people used to hold on to reload, and it's like, why?
Hmm.
It's not gonna line up. You still have like 30 seconds on your wildfire to come back. Use it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I even have like 20 or 15 or 20 seconds on it. I still use it. And yeah, wildfire is going to sit there for a second until I can get through, that, or at least part of that rotation, because it should come up at the very end of reload.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's one of the things that a lot of people, and what you may be kind of misconstrued on my comment of pushing them back, is I'm not going to push something like that back. But if I know that there's a burst phase or where I have my cooldowns or most of my cooldowns are going to line up, say wildfire or whatever, and I only have a few seconds on Hawk's Eye and Blood for Blood. Granted, Raging Strikes is going to be a little bit longer because it's a little bit longer cooldown. But if I can get at least most of my stuff to line up and I know I can do a burst period, then I'm going to push them back just a little bit. Outside of that, yeah, I agree with you. It's a loss not to hit it.
Yeah.
You know?
And with machinist, you're absolutely right. A lot of people do wait on that second set of cooldowns before they do to reload. I'm completely against that. I use reload every time it's up. And then every third one, it lines up perfectly, and all these cooldowns are up. You have Raging Strikes, you have everything up by the third one. And you just blow it all at the same time, and you get another big burst. So you have your big burst at the start, you have a small wildfire in the middle, then another big burst, small, another one. So it just goes every other. You kind of have these bigger bursts. You should, I think you should use reload as soon as it comes up and go through the motions of getting out there and getting reassembled because that lines up perfectly too, along with your ricochet lines up perfectly with it. And so if you don't use them, you're losing DPS. The only and again, like you said, if it's in a few seconds, let it all kind of line up and get in those big bursts because machinists are amazing at bursting. But I don't want to jump too much into like certain role details with machinists and everything. But
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. A lot of people do hold off, and they need to understand what they're losing when they do hold off. Because 30
Yeah.
seconds on a 60-second cooldown is a lot. That's half of a
Yeah.
cooldown.
Yeah,
Uh,
when in doubt, use them right away, and you'll probably won't be too far off what the correct is. And if you really want to master your class, you figure it out. But it's fight dependent. It can be comp dependent, honestly, like your raid comp dependent.
mhm.
So, but yeah, I would go for use it as soon as possible for sure for
So
now, and then you can experiment and see what the difference is yourself. But or read some guides up on it and see the difference yourself as well. But yeah, that's rarely is it actually correct to
yeah,
wait that long on a cooldown.
yeah,
So one thing I wanted to this could be like a whole nother thing to talk about at some point, maybe not in this show or not. But one thing I wanted to just kind of touch on because we're talking about GCDs, I mean off GCDs and stuff like that is how long it takes. There's like that little latency between what debuffs or abilities are on a boss or what buffs or abilities are on you currently. And so one of the best examples I could give of this is a summoner's Fester and the dots that are on the target. So like for example, try Disaster is off the GCD. If you try Disaster and then Fester, your Fester is going to do 0 damage, despite the fact that you see the dots up on there. And it's the same thing with when you're snapshotting abilities and things like that as well. It's really important to remember that because you're using these actions in between doesn't mean that the next ability you're going to use is going to know that they're up yet. So when you're applying dots or using an ability that interacts with those type of things, there's about a 1 second delay before buffs activate, and we know this with like Hollow Ground and stuff like that. You pop Hollow Ground, the cooldown goes off, and then you die immediately after, stuff like that. Same with Home Gang and Living Dead. It's about 1 second. It's probably about 1 second, a little bit more. So every single ability has like an activation time associated with it. So keep that in mind with snapshotting abilities or using a big attack right after. That's why a lot of openers are kind of like set up in a way that you're using buffs while you're about to. Your next move is something that doesn't really matter as much. It's not. It's like a starter of a finisher or something like that, or mid combo, because. And also that matters if you screw up your opener or screw up some kind of ability sequence. Again, the summoner one is a really big one. You always want to. You try Disaster, you got to do something else in between. Maybe activate an ability or something like that, or use a rune too. That like I'm not a summoner, so that might not be the right advice. But just remember that the Fester won't activate, won't know about your 3 dots up on the boss because there's that 1 second activation time. So just want people to remember that. And like I said, that's a big conversation. There are many examples of it, but just keep that in mind as well when we're using off globals.
Yeah, because I mean, it kind of goes back to the whole animation stutter step, and it's kind of what Alice in chat said is that it doesn't actually apply until after or at the end of the animation, which I think a lot of that also plays into the server tick. You know, this entire game's server side, and it's annoying. It's something that we have to battle, but. Yeah, I mean that's something that like my summoner in my group for a long time he had to put in like an extra skill in between his festers just so he made sure when he was spamming buttons to put out all of his damage. And honestly, like it's not going. I don't think either way because basically he was just switching his Fester in his next move. So he would, whatever he was using after Fester at the time, he would put there, then Fester. Was it a loss? Maybe 1 or 2 either way, you know, a loss or gain, depending on, you know, what the damage was that hit. But, I mean, if you have to, just put it 1 global back. I mean, Fester's off the GCD, so just put a global in between there, hit Fester off the GCD, and you're fine.
Yeah, a global is enough space usually for all the things to take effect. And so that's the only risk you kind of run into when you're like spamming, you're double weaving. And double weaving again is the off global cooldown. You're putting 2 of them in between a move. So there's a lot of stuff to go out there and learn. And this is something that you guys usually have to go research some more. But if you're out there and you're leveling a new class, or you're going out there and you're trying to learn a new class, playing these classes, have fun with it by learning how to make them optimal by using your off global cooldowns. Don't just tank and forget you have cooldowns you can use on trash pools or something else. Or if you're doing DPS, you're going through trash, you have nearly 30 to 60 seconds of fight. Just go ahead and use your cooldowns. Whatever, you don't have them up for the boss? That's okay. You're going to kill the boss. The bosses aren't that hard.
Yeah, now this is just make sure use cooldowns, everyone. Make sure you use your abilities.
I want to make sure that I let you guys know this because these cooldowns are oGCDs. They are abilities you weave in between your other abilities. And if you don't realize that, you're losing global cooldowns. And people who sit there and then they're like, oh, let me click on all these to do a big burst. That does apply in some situations, especially in openers. But in the middle of a fight, you want to hit them between your global cooldowns so you can still maximize your total DPS going out. And knowing where to put them is kind of important. But while you're doing dungeons and you're learning a class, if you want to be a better player, figure out how to use these abilities and use them all the time. And the more you can use them, the better better player you're going to be. And that's kind of the point I wanted to get across today, is that don't let abilities sit there untouched. Make sure you're using them and make sure you're figuring out how to optimize them. In the end, you'll be someone I want to actually raid with instead of someone I want to kick out of my group and find someone else, you know. So, anyways, anything else before we go on to the next topic, guys?
No, I think we beat this dead horse enough.
This horse is dead. Everyone in this chat will be masters at every single class they play because they're using their oGCDs properly. Okay. All right, and also all the people on YouTube watching this too. Thumbs up to you guys. I really appreciate you guys. All right, so let's go on to the next subject. And how I want to kind of do these shows is when I bring on a guest, I want to go over one topic that I've been definitely wanting to talk about improving yourself. But I also know the guests coming on the show have some important things to say that I don't want to be overlooked, especially, you know, if they don't get on the show as often. Like Ark gets on here all the time, so we know how Ark thinks at this point. Blizz doesn't get on the show. This is his second time being on the show so far. And he has
Frosty hates me.
Yeah, I mean, last show it was so horrible, man. What can I say?
Yeah,
No,
it
man.
was like who was it in chat? I think it was God forbid that was in chat the other night. I was telling that last time I came on, your ratings just went into the garbage. I haven't been back on here.
No, it's been great, man. I could go into the details about how this show is put together and all the craziness that's happened over the last. I don't know even which episode you were on. Like how long ago that was.
20 something.
20 something. So it's been like nearly 4 months, 5 months ago.
Something like that.
Oh man, this show's been going on for a while. We're gonna hit our year spot in the next couple of months, and that's kind of amazing. So, anyways, let's get back to the show. First, I want to ask you, Ark. Besides off global cooldowns and everything else, what kind of advice could you give to a player that could help them globally through playing the game, no matter what they're playing, to be a better player overall?
Sure. So yeah, one of the things I wanted to kind of bring up. There's a lot of stuff I could always talk about. But
Hold on. Let's take a quick
Yeah, I know,
quick moment to notice Blizz here on his phone, sitting here texting it like right into the camera. I said like, oh yeah, I don't care what Ark's talking about. I'm just
It's
gonna.
actually not texting.
He was
It's
talking to me, is what he was doing.
yeah.
Oh,
I was sending him my tips.
yeah. Okay, I got you. All right, sorry, Ark. Go ahead. I got it.
No. Yeah, so one thing that I kind of like, because this is like half the Reddit posts out there, and I know Reddit people are usually just venting, but like Duty Finder is one thing, like how to be a good player in Duty Finder, in general. Like this, so here's some general advice. This is stuff that I do, so it can be rather opinionated. It might not work for everyone, but this is how I kind of get my enjoyment out of Duty Finder, and this is how nearly every new Duty Finder I've ever been in, from like a level 15 dungeon to Void Arc, basically. I've never really not succeeded at completing it in a timely manner, usually as well too. And that's just like how to act in there and stuff like that. So first off, it's really common for people who, you know, especially raiders. Raiders are probably the worst at this, to be very used to, because you're so coordinated with your static. You're so used to people having very specific play styles. You're like, my healer always does this for me, or my bard always makes it so I don't have the passive debuff and stuff like that. It's like you're so used to how these people all play together really, really well. Going into a Duty Finder, especially, and let's just say for now, all pugs for sure. Like you're solo queuing into a Duty Finder for anything. We can use
Right.
4-man dungeons, for example. Expecting that kind of behavior from the people who came in, expecting coordination or doing things that require coordination, you can't expect it. I mean, I'm not saying that it can't happen, but you shouldn't expect that kind of behavior or that way those players kind of expect those players to play like what you're used to. And it's really important that if you want to be a very skilled player in a pug content, you have to be very flexible. You have to be able to get the best out of everyone else's play style, and that's the most important thing you can do. And sometimes that means, how can you be most successful at a dungeon where people are doing almost no damage? Well, that means that usually you're going to have to do a lot of damage, but it also means that you have to ensure mechanics are executed perfectly. And as well, you've got to, and there's like a lot of other things too, like, you know, making sure not to pull too much and things like that too. generally, if you actually don't if the group isn't demoralized by the fact that you realize everyone's doing really low damage or anything like that, or it's moving really slow, you may be like 10 minutes longer of a dungeon, but you're still going to get the clear. And you might have a lot more fun along the way too, because um, it's like some great examples of mine for four-man dungeons is stuff like uh, there's some fights I don't know the mechanics of them, and that's because I just burn them down. I play with people I know, and we just like kill the boss before he does mechanics, and then I go and do it as solo queue, and I don't know some of the mechanics, and maybe they're not mechanics that I'm normally supposed to do as the role I go in as, but still, if we wipe to a fight and I could have done the mechanics, or there was more I could have done, I'm just as much as fault or just as much an unskilled player as everyone else in that group because I didn't contribute my full potential to complete the dungeon.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, no, that's extremely great
and,
points.
yeah. So yeah, I think it's just remember when you go into Duty Finder for anything, Void Ark included, that keep that attitude. Understand that that like you have to be a very flexible player. Take the opportunity to become a flexible player. People have different play styles, and you play off of them. Play off of their strengths. If you don't know mechanics to the fights in the four-man dungeon because you don't normally need to, that's not on the other players. That's just as much as on you. And try not to. If you force your play style on others, you'll get less out of them, and usually you'll just get into fights. Honestly.
Yeah.
And it was kind of me and Frosty were talking about this just like a little bit before we did the show, but a lot of people like to talk about training players in Duty Finder. Like, oh, you're like an ice mage, right? You're an ice mage. Let me tell you exactly why ice mage is bad. And you're typing out the whole time in the dungeon. How focused are you really if you're trying to teach this person how to play black mage properly? Also, the black mage is probably getting frustrated with all this new information coming in. Probably feeling really confused. Not to mention, and they're probably trying to learn how the mechanics in the dungeon work or how to get through the dungeon. So you're just two people are distracted while you're trying to train this person. And Duty Finder's not really the place to teach random people how to play well. It's more, here's what we have. Here's the set of skills we have. How do we get through the dungeon? If you're really into training other players or telling them that they might be playing their class incorrectly, do it at the end of the dungeon. If you're that into it, give them your like TeamSpeak information or give them some kind of way of contacting you because it really goes much further than you just giving them a little bit of information or the amount of tips you have because you don't know if they're going to be successful at it. You don't know if you're giving them good information. They might misinterpret your information because you're rushing to tell them it. So it's really important that you kind of take the initiative. If you're planning to do it, you've got to do it right and all the way through because you're maybe just making them play worse. There's no way to guarantee it unless maybe they're on your server or something like that. But so the advice that you should focus on is the actual dungeon, what they're there for, mechanics. If you need them to do some mechanics, explain how the fight works. They might not be able to do it. Then you just kind of put some extra in if you want to be successful at it. If you don't have the time for it, or you're not interested in doing that, then you can leave, but don't complain about it afterwards because you could have put more effort in to get through the dungeon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just like a matter of accept the group that you go in when you go into a pug group and use their skills to your advantage. You get some interesting results, and you get the best thing about it for me, what I love, very unique experiences every single time. It's like, how do I get to do this dungeon when this person looks like they can't like rotate their character ever, or they can't move, or they stand in every bad mechanic, or they die often. It's like, how are we going to get through this? How can I work off of this player and get through it? Sometimes, like, in dungeons, I'm tanking. And, like, so no one ever DPS, like, Nidhogg, for example. No one DPSs the prisons. I could DPS the prisons, but then I turn the boss. So I'm going to figure out how to do in-between cleaves and DPS the thing. And of course, I tried to tell people to break it, but they might not notice. But they might see the giant dragon turn around while I'm trying to DPS the prison. I'm like, oh, what's he doing? Oh, that's what he's doing. And then we kind of get the idea and stuff like that. And
like then they say, why are you moving the boss? I'm a monk. I have to get positionals. This is stupid.
Yeah, that's fine with me. That's fine with me. Because it's like, this is like some aggressive monk.
Sounds exactly
right?
like my monk.
It's like, I'm trying to do the prisms. I don't want our healer to die. Yeah. So I think it's like, again, because I'm giving such very general advice that's kind of, it might be hard to kind of understand what I'm saying, but it's like, go in there and with the expectation of like, how can I be a flexible player? How can I work with everyone I get in this group? And it's like, it's always so fun for me to see what type of player I'm going to get. when I go in there, and I just, I'm just like, what am I gonna? Am I gonna get a group of like really big raiders who want to do big pulls all the time? Am I gonna get a group of like very casual players who like to chat a lot about stuff all the time? Like what is it gonna be? Am I gonna get an ice mage and I get to watch what an ice mage is?
Yeah.
It's like I've never seen that playstyle before. That is very interesting.
Yeah, I think treating dungeons and going in there and doing solo queues because you want to do your expert real quick, you log in and then you get into a bad group. Treat it like a puzzle. I mean, it's another part of the game, and if you can figure out how to make a bad group work, you can figure out bad situations in your raids and how to recover and get clears. I mean,
It's all a little bit.
yeah, I mean, it progresses you as a person and a player in the game, not just, oh, let me figure out how to make up for this tank that doesn't know how to hold mobs. Oh, I'm a monk and I'm always getting aggro because the tank can't hold aggro. Well, do Fists of Earth or whatever it's called, right? And then run in there and hold the hate. Be the monk tank and just deal with it for that dungeon.
And that has happened before to me. I've had to tank on my ninja before, and it worked because it's just a matter of not having the healer get interrupted on stuff, and
Yeah.
I can do the mechanics and not take extra damage. Sometimes it's just a matter of just knowing the fight so well that you're not making it harder. You're not standing in ground AoEs. You're not making the mechanics. You're not failing the mechanics so that because usually one player can do all the mechanics in most of these fights. So that's a lot of part of it. Even in Void Ark, like I've wiped to the orbs on the third boss in Void Ark before, and that's all on me because I could have taken every single orb or most of them to the point where we wouldn't have wiped. And it's
Yeah.
like I could have done something there. I don't care that we wiped when the boss is at 5%, because I was part of that wipe. I should have done some of those orbs. You
Right.
know?
You wanted to pump out
I
your
did
DPS
excel.
though, right? You wanted to get that extra bit of DPS. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Uh,
So it's like, do you want?
yeah.
Yeah. What are you getting out of the dungeon? And it should be that, like, this is why this content is fun and relevant is part of it, and this is why MMOs are fun and relevant. Is you get to play with players with such unique play styles, and this
Unique's a
content.
very nice word for some of the situations, but yeah,
Hey,
you're right.
this content doesn't require a lot of the stuff we talk about. It doesn't require everyone to be an extremely skilled player, and if you want to be a skilled player, that's great. This is part of it. You have to understand how to work with a lot of different types of players, bad or good. And the more you get better at working with these flexibility, being a flexible player, the more you see like every dungeon I go in, it's successful and it's fun, and I hardly notice that I'm doing this stuff anymore. And it's like pugging expert roulette is more of a fun thing to do, and I don't need to wait for members to show up because I can't play with pugs and stuff like that. But yeah, it's pretty common for a lot of raiders because they just burn bosses down to not know how to do these fights, and then they blame the pugs for doing low damage. And I'm like, can't expect them to do high damage in a fight that doesn't require high damage. It's strange, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my thing with that too, though, is that, and I'm kind of, I can be one of those people. Like I get irritated sometimes. It depends. Like, maybe it's kind of an off day or whatever else. I'll get in there and I just really don't feel like having to drag three other people through a dungeon or whatever. Most of the time, it's like it's whatever. And I kind of chalk it up to me going on the wrong class to where I couldn't be able to kind of control the outcome of it a little bit better. And so my thing with it is just I don't know. You gotta have kind of a patience, and like Ark said, like nothing in this game, as long as you have like a halfway decent healer as a DPS, if you pull aggro, and they're paying attention, they can heal you through anything.
Yeah.
As long as you're dodging mechanics. Granted, I mean you don't want to make it harder on the healer because you don't have
Yeah.
the cooldowns as a tank. But
Yeah,
I
you're
mean,
the good player. You're the good player. Like that's
Yeah.
the thing. Too.
That's the thing. Yeah, everyone listening here, you're striving to be the good player. You're trying to get to that situation to where, hey, this is how I react to this situation to help myself out. And if you want to help them out, great. But you're not always going to have someone that's going to be like, oh yeah, that's so great. You're telling me how to play my character. Thanks, guy. They're going to be like, get the F out of my face. I don't care. I'm spending 20 minutes to get through this dungeon, and I don't even want to think. I'm just going to 1, 2, 3 all the way. You can't do anything about it. You can kick me, whatever, and then I'll report you for harassment. Whatever. I don't care. I'm out. So I mean, you run into those situations, and in order for you guys to be better players, you have to figure out how to react to that and how to not let that stuff get to you, because there are going to be people in there. For example, we were talking earlier before the show that there's people who purposely go out there and try to get someone angry, and that's all they want to do is they want to be toxic and get a response from you. And being a good player, you just have to understand how to deal with those situations without hurting yourself, because that you don't want it to hurt you. That's the whole point. If it cannot hurt you, then you're fine. You don't need to win in the situation. You just need to not take effect from it, and in that case, you win. So
Yeah, there's definitely some extreme cases where it comes to harassment and just people maliciously preventing the group from succeeding. It's very rare because it's very. First off, you can kick those people pretty quickly for harassment. That's a legitimate way for kicking someone. Sometimes it's a group of 3, and you might have to take the loss of leaving, unfortunately. And that, again, that's very rare because that's 3 people who are basically spending a really long section of their day just doing that. It doesn't come up too often. It does come up.
it does exist. I mean, it's like a 0.1%, but
it has not happened to me before, but I do understand that it is a possibility to come up. Usually it's just one person. Sometimes it is a group of 3. Sometimes it's a group of 7 when it's like larger raid content. So I do understand that happens. That is totally a different thing because they are actually actively trying to prevent it. But anyone else, it's a player who just joined up the queue for the first time and they're like, I want to see what this dungeon is. Normally all I do is RP on my server and I want to do a dungeon for once. So like they barely know how to play their class or anything, but they're really excited about the dungeon.
Yeah,
like,
and they don't want to hear, hey, they don't want to be taught how to play their class. They just want to enjoy it. And you just got to kind of...
And in their defense, they are playing their class enough to get through that content.
Yeah.
If a group of 4 people like that went together, it would take a very long time. They would eventually figure out what they needed to do, but they would clear that content. And just because you're so much, like, have so much more skill or knowledge of different aspects of the game, that you should just make it easier for them. Not necessarily, it shouldn't be
Make it easier for you, not just for them. Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of those people can kind of hide behind it unless you're using a parser or whatever else. You can they usually try to hide behind the other players, the other 3 players. I mean, I've had it happen to me a few times where you have an arc where I've had people come into something like a Death Vigil or some mall, and they're in like I-90 gear or whatever. like this gear hasn't been relevant for a long time. Why are you in this? And they make some real troll comment, and then that's grounds right there, to kick them, and the group usually does, because you can just tell that they're in there to kind of troll a group and keep them from progressing, and that's kind of on them. But I have had it also on the flip side of that, where people go in and they just don't realize that they can get free gear in some places here or there, or I have a lot of people complain about me because like I'm leveling warrior now and I'm 57 in the vault or whatever, but I still have like mostly dreadworm gear on.
Yeah.
And people look at dreadworm as like it's I-130, but if you go look at like high quality like 139 gear or whatever, it's only 2 main stat difference. Like it's not that big of a deal. And matter of fact, if I remember, the axe actually has lower physical damage on it than so it's like you kind of have to look at the stats there as well. But a lot of people complain about it. It's like, oh, you're low geared or whatever. Give me a chance.
If you can meet the minimum eye level of the dungeon, you can fill the role. You can do it.
Yep, that's why they're there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, people just aren't used to the dungeons actually being hard. And like I love 4-man content. I miss the hard 4 or 5-man content from other MMOs, or even when 4-man content was hard in early Final Fantasy 14. I think, like AV is a good example, right? Like those are still
AV is still challenging for people, and I love it. That's why I love it.
Through that dungeon.
I love it because people go in there with such dread. But I go in there and I'm like, I know how to destroy this dungeon. And they're going to mess up, but that gives me a situation to figure out how do I fix that situation and still get through the dungeon as quickly as possible. And it's fun to me. Like you were saying this entire time, it's like just working with the situation and the puzzle.
I've gotten into kiting kiting is actually a very powerful thing in this game, and people should understand that you can kite most enemies and bosses for a very long time, and it will reduce the amount of damage you take. I've done speed pulls that I shouldn't have done, where I didn't have cooldowns before, and the healer wasn't really up for it, and I had to kite the mobs for a very long time and just hold aggro here and there in between the heals I got, and it did not die. So these are the type of things you might pick up eventually, and you can kind of try out when things go wrong and stuff like that. But yeah, you can kite bosses in these old dungeons for quite a bit of time, believe it or not. You can finish them off. You might delay the fight enough to get raises off on tanks. Like, AV has got the dodging boss, right? That's usually what crushes people, right?
It's so funny. Yeah.
And honestly, yes, some of these dungeons might take a long time. If you have the time to do it, this is your chance to develop as a player and get better at getting through these fights with maybe a healer that always gets hit by something. Yeah. But you have to make sure the initiative to not ever get hit by something, and to try and maybe push your DPS as far as you can to make it so that they'll survive through the fight. They see less mechanics. It isn't easy all the time. It definitely isn't easy all the time. But like, this is you get really good at it. You become successful at most encounters, and it just becomes fun to do. And sometimes you don't even have to say anything to the other players. You can just do most of the things to get through it for them. You just do all the mechanics. I think another one I was recently screwed up on was like a while ago in Pharaoh Sirius, the slimes on the second boss. You're supposed to kill them on the cracks, or else you take massive raid damage. I didn't know that for a very long time, very, very long time. And so we wiped to it once, and someone's like, you're supposed to fill those with cracks. And it's like, oh, like as a melee DPS, that's probably not something I should do, but now I always do it because usually people don't do it, and that really helps out. And honestly, a healer could heal through that. A really skilled healer could heal through the damage that comes out of that. Sometimes that'll happen, but
it's not always going to have a skilled healer.
You can always just do the mechanics properly, and then you're more likely to clear that fight as opposed to wiping to it 3 times. All right, might clear it 3 minutes slower, but you're going to still clear it.
I want to address 2 comments real quick before we go on this about AV, because I have to make sure. One is sometimes it will take a while for that fight, but I mean that leads into expectations we have for dungeons. When you're queuing up, you need to have expectations. You're not going to have a good group. If you have expectations, you're going to have a good group. You're going to be a letdown 90% of the time. And that's how I go into it.
Bring people with you. Bring people with you. If you're not going to do the 4-man with people, if you're uncomfortable playing with players who you're not used to playing if it's maybe very skilled players or players with a very unique style of playing. That's on the other scale of it too. Like if you have a bunch of people who accept you as an ice mage, the same set. Like again, we're talking about being a good player, so this is a really bad example. But so I'll focus on the other side of it. So but if that's what it is, play with people If you have a very very specific mindset going into the duty finder on either side of it. If not, if you're going in as a pug, expect the unexpected is really the best way to put it, right? It could be a very slow dungeon in some cases. So if you need a fast clear, wait for people If you want to roll the dice and see if you get a really good group, you can do that. And I would recommend you don't do that because you're potentially wasting other people's time when you go in and then leave if it's not something you wanted. But I don't think it's that bad because people get in progress queues all the time, so it's not terrible. So. Yeah.
The other one is face. I'm going to interrupt you again, Blizz.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right, I was just kidding, Blizz. Go ahead. Okay. Go ahead, Ben.
I completely forgot now.
Yes. All right, I'm going to say my point then, and then you can remember while I'm saying my point. Okay. So the other point is that I face pulled the first room in AV, but that was I don't remember doing it, but I'm sure I did that either out of fun. Or I made a mistake, and then I was like, we're just going to do it, and then we didn't do it and died. But it's okay, because those things are going to happen. And that's one of the challenges with AV is handling that first room and how to handle it properly. And that's what people hate so much, really, is that first room. Because as soon as you get in there, you have something difficult to deal with. And there's so many things that can go wrong with that first room, and that's one of the reasons why I love it.
Skipping trash is another one. People are.
I love pulling all that trash. So much EXP.
Well, some people want to skip trash. Some people want to pull a lot of trash at the same time. It's.
And just to let you guys know, the tank's in charge of that stuff. So,
Well, I mean, it's
yeah.
kind of like WP and pulling all those mobs and locking them out and stuff like that, and skipping over trash and doing speed runs like that, and why SE really hated it. The thing that I was going to say was back on kind of running with people that you know. I mean, I see so many people in different FCs, and coming from a large FC myself, or used to being in one, you saw so many people that refuse to run with their FC mates, and it's like chances are you're probably going to have a better party with these people than hoping that you're going to get someone better in the party finder, so or the duty finder. But you know, you have to, like you said, kind of take your punches and roll with the punches a bit when you go into content by yourself, solo content, because you can't expect everybody to be on your level no matter where you are. People are going to be better, people are going to be worse. They may be right there with you. But it's one of those things where I've I've had to grow because I'm kind of what you were talking about with the Raider arc, is that like I have certain expectations as a raid leader, and it's kind of hard to overcome when I'm playing other content. Um, I've had to really learn how to kind of tone that back. So like I'll complain to myself or in TeamSpeak or something like that. Be like, man, I don't like this tank. He's not holding aggro, blah blah blah, whatever. But you know you just kind of stick it out because honestly that's
It's
what you should
faster
have
to stick it
expected.
out instead
Yeah.
of dropping and getting in a different
And
group.
then that's where the mindset comes in, is like, how do I make this work? And then you might end up having fun in the end with the bad tank. Whenever I level healer, I like bad tanks. That's my favorite. Brave Locks with a bad tank, so much fun.
It's really
They get
boring
hit
with
by
good tanks.
everything.
So
They get hit by every single like ground AoE and stuff like that, and you're just like, I got it. Like your cooldowns are like have to be perfect. Like you just
yeah,
like very, and you have to watch your mana very carefully too. But yeah, I mean, I don't main healer, so this is why I probably have so much fun out of it. I don't raid with it. So whenever I level healer, I actually prefer groups that take a lot of damage and make it hard for me to fit in damage as a healer and stuff like that. But I understand that a lot of people won't have this opinion. This is why I said it's very opinionated. I'm just trying to say, this is a good mindset to have. You shouldn't look at these players as poor or bad when you go into the group. You can have your own personal opinions about them, but when they're in that dungeon, they're what you have to clear the dungeon with, and they're the best thing you have because the alternative is nothing, right? You could start kicking them or something crazy like that, but that's usually not going to turn out too well in the end. Um, and also, it's just not, you're not learning how to play with a variety of players if you kind of remove players that you're not able to work with. So. And I understand the extremes when there's malicious players or players who are just AFK all the time. And that's not the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I hope people understand that that's very separate. I'm talking about people who are actually trying their best, and their best is very different than what you're used to.
yeah.
Um,
And I
and
think that you'll become a better player in the end
yep,
if you just take these experiences and apply them to your own situation, or dealing with them in ways that will make you overall more content instead of just being like, I can't believe I just got in here to this tank that doesn't know how to put it Defiance on.
yep,
Just, figure out how to deal with it. And if you figure it out, complain about it all you want to, but still make the best of the situation. Because if you don't try to make the best out of these situations, maybe you're not trying to be a good player. I mean,
or you're,
honestly, you're not making efforts out there to do things to push your limits. And I feel like that's an important thing about being a good player.
Well,
Um,
and another thing, like kind of an example that I had here recently, I was in the area, and for the entire dungeon, like we were on the pool before the last pool to Nidhogg, the three little guy, the one flying guy, and the two little dragons or whatever. Um, Up until that point, I was able to be in Defiance to start, get initial aggro, go into Deliverance, and the healer was just fine. We get to that pool, and I ended up popping Raw Intuition, Vengeance, Thrill of Battle, and Home Gang. Still didn't get a healer or whatever. And right after that, he had said to me, it was like, hey, that Defiance though, and I was like, what are you talking about? I've had Deliverance on on these trash pools all through this dungeon. You've been fine. Why is this a problem now? And the point that I'm trying to get at with that is like I feel like too many people get into pissing wars when it comes to people like that. Like I just made the conscious decision to stay in defiance instead of argue with him because he was gonna feel like he was entitled to be right the entire time anyway. Um, Even though I knew, how I was playing my class. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. And then sometimes it'd just be easier to put it on and then kind of, stance when they don't notice or stuff like that. Like on the final boss fight, they're not, if you're going to get the kill, they won't notice. But, like, because
Change their minds about it. Use the
Change their
cooldowns right and say, hey,
yeah,
look,
but rather than
is it
fighting
really
them,
that bad? Yeah.
yeah. But rather than fighting them, you might be able to get through the fight with Defiance on. Probably the group doesn't need it if it was being that successful along lines. I had someone in the IRE tell me to put Shield Oath on when I had Shield Oath on. That was pretty awesome during
Yeah.
Trash. I was like, it's like Shield Oath, and I'm like,
Do you have cleric stance on or something? I mean, yeah.
I think he didn't say much after that, so I was just like, I think he kind of knew.
Yeah.
Can I just say before we move on, one of my again, I was talking about bad tanks and how it's fun to heal through them sometimes. One of my most favorite experiences was doing Hawk Manor normal mode before you get your job stones. I think I was playing White Mage or Conjurer at the time, and it was a Marauder who had Blood for Blood tanking. It was awesome. Super awesome.
That's
I'd
great.
see Blood for Blood go on, and he starts tanking like 5 things at the same time, and it was really interesting to keep him up. I think he died once from it. I understand. I didn't go on and tell him not to use Blood for Blood because honestly, he's going to turn into a warrior soon. He's not going to have Blood for Blood. What am I going to have a fight about this guy using Blood for Blood if I can have an interesting experience trying to heal a tank using Blood for Blood?
Yeah.
So that's my choice. But it worked out. We cleared the dungeon. Here's a Marauder using Blood for Blood, and we cleared our dungeon just fine in the end. And it was tons of fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go on to the next topic here from our next wonderful guest here, Blizz. What's a good point you could make that players can take home and maybe turn them into a better player later on if they start using that?
Well, kind of the first thing I want to touch on, which not enough people do, is studying. That kind of applies to your class, your rotation, and any kind of content that you're doing. Too often do I see people not reading tooltips. They have no idea how to push their buttons in a certain order. Even if, say, like on Monk or really Dark Knight or any of the classes that have any combos, 3-hit combos, like they light up and they still don't understand, hey, I can hit this button, it does this, and, I get a higher potency or more enmity out of it. And it's really sad to see, though Square Enix really doesn't have anything in game to really prepare you for something like that, especially when they're wanting to bring in new players, which is unfortunate. But yeah, just studying up on your class is a huge thing that can really make you a better player. Go and look up different guides. I mean, you have people like Xeno, Mr. Happy. I think Miztech has a couple of them, but there's quite a few people out there that, yeah, Creator, do class guides, whether they're written or they're video guides. Go look them up. Go figure out what they're doing and how you can apply some of the stuff that they do to your class. Like, I'm not saying go out and mimic them, even though they're some of the best players in the world. You're not going to be able to do the things that they do because they're the ones that figured it out. And they're going to push their kind of theory crafting a little bit farther than you will. They're always going to be one step ahead of you because they're coming up with the theories. You're just kind of following them. Like, take it in bits and pieces and apply some of it to what you do and see how it works, and then kind of like baby step your way into it until you can kind of get full muscle memory over what you need to do. And I tell my guys all the time, go beat up the dummy. I can't tell you how many times, well, really every day for probably a year and a half, if I wasn't doing anything when I started this game, was spent on a test dummy. And not even on classes that I played religiously or in any kind of content. Mm-hmm. It was just, I wanted to get good at this class, so I went and beat up a dummy. And I think that's kind of unfortunate too, that we all know how parsers are kind of looked at by SE. You know, it's overlooked, but they don't want you to say anything about it and this and that. But you know, you have to, and that kind of brings the stigma of something that I had to deal with when I first got into the game, where I had some people that absolutely hated parsing. They didn't want anything to do with it, or whatever else. And I'm sorry, if you're pushing content, they put DPS checks in there, they put gear walls in there for a reason. Like you're gonna have to have something that to show you, hey, this is kind of where you're lacking in certain areas. And there's been a lot of great tools like FF logs and stuff that came out, that can really break that down for you. But anyways, that kind of leads into my next one, which is practice. Practice, practice, practice. Like whether it's running content over and over and over until your eyes bleed, or you know, beating up a dummy, like I said, or either even like just taking bits and pieces of certain content or a certain rotation, like I was talking about, and kind of applying that to the next time you run, doing things a little bit differently. And one of the things that kind of for me that go into practice is the theory crafting aspect of it. And I know a lot of people don't do that, but that honestly is one of the things that would make you such a better player, is actually going and figuring out things. You know, you don't have to be like Xeno and figuring everything out about a warrior or creator, figuring out everything about a bard. That way you can give it back to the community. But go and do some legwork yourself. I really feel like too many players want everything given to them on a silver platter. And you're 9 out of 10 chances you're not going to be the person that's going to learn that way. You know, go and do it yourself. You're gonna feel more accomplished, and two, it's gonna make you a better player in the end. And then on the backside of that is consistency. Something I don't see a lot, and something that my group struggles with, you know, mechanics, and something that we work on week in and week out is being consistent. You know, some mechanics they're ever changing because of RNG or whatever else you want to chalk it up to. You know, you could be targeted by this or you couldn't. But you know, they're on a rotation. So you kind of know when they're coming. So if you can consistently keep yourself in one area doing X number of DPS at this point, or doing X, like take for example my Dragoon, he does. He's broken it down even to which skills he uses at what time when certain mechanics come up. That's how he knows whether he's behind in his rotation or not. You know, certain things like that is you got to find kind of like, I guess, waymarks almost in your rotation and in content to keep yourself on pace. And then also, you know, being consistent with mechanics. Once you learn them, make sure that you're doing them. Too many times, especially with raiders, and you even see it sometimes in dungeons with raiders, like Ark was talking about before, is, you know, you get with people that you haven't, you know, played with or anything. They're a little bit slower, and you end up seeing mechanics that you haven't seen because you ran with another group, or you ran with a group in your FC and you were pushing past those mechanics. You know, if you've seen them or you know what to do with them, do them properly every time. Don't tunnel vision. That's one of the hugest things I see is people tunnel vision on stuff, and they lose their consistency that way. Even in just the rotation. So
Right.
those are kind of the three things that I've really only wanted to touch on, because that's what I feel would make a lot of other people, if they picked it up better in the long run.
Yeah.
I think I kind of actually want to go off a little bit of something you said there too, is going out and, you know, and Alice has said this multiple times, and I'm pretty sure this has like been voiced multiple times throughout the entire show, throughout the chat, is to read your tooltips and everything, and understanding what these different moves do. And sometimes the tools, most of the time, they're on par, but there are going to be little neat things that you don't know about it until you read up in a guide or something else about it. But every time I level a new job, a new class, no matter what it is I look and I see, okay, here is the new ability I'm getting. This is what does it do? And I do simple theory crafting. And what this means is I look at it. Okay, this is the damage it does. What do I have to do to get to use this skill? And overall, is it efficient using all of these skills? Just do little bits of math. I mean, you have one new skill every so often. It's not extremely often you get it. Look at it, see how it interacts with the other skills, and how you can make the most out of it. For example, you get, with Dragoon, you get a move that when you hit it, makes your next move a crit. Look at your highest damage move and try to hit that before you hit that one, and try to get that to line up. And if you do that, you'll get the most out of that ability. And that can be applied to a lot of different situations. And so while I'm leveling and I'm going and doing the same thing Ark says, is working with the group trying to figure out how to make this dungeon work and how to make the best out of the situation, I'm reading on my tooltips. I keep my action help up, and I turn it off when I play my machinist because I don't want to see it popping up if I have to click on something. But I turn it on when I'm learning a new class. So I can sit there, and while I'm waiting for something else to happen, I can read the tooltip a little bit more in detail and figure something out. For example, doing the math on certain dots that you have. Okay, this is how much damage it gives. And I know it goes with server ticks, which is like every 3 seconds or so. So figure out exactly how much damage that's going to do. And you're like, well, if this dot stays up for 10 seconds, it'll be the most useful ability I can use throughout, attacking this mob. Figure that stuff out. Have fun with it. And if when you're doing the simple theory crafting, you become really good at this class, and you're going to overlook things, and you're going to have an opinion that doesn't really match up to what's really the true meta for that job is, but you'll know the job really well going into it at the very end of the game. And when you get a new trait, that's another important thing. A lot of people miss this. It's like when you get a new trait, find out what that trait does. It will make a certain ability useful when it wasn't useful before. But so yeah, I completely agree. Going in there, learning, practicing, and while you're leveling up, practice. That's perfect time to figure out your class and play it. Don't just find out, oh, well, I'll just 1, 2, 3 throughout the dungeon and not use anything and get to the very end. If you do that, you won't know your job when you hit 60.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and one of the other things that I see a lot of people kind of get lax on is once they get into content, whether it be dungeons or whether it be raids or whatever else, and they run through it once, whether they cleared or not, they decide that they want to play other games or whatever else in between when they have a problem that they need to fix. Or they need to study up more, and that's fine. I can't, and nobody else can really sit here and be like, hey, you have to do this. But at that point, as a raid leader, like, to me, that really frustrates me. If I've come to you personally and been like, hey, look, you need to work on your DPS here, we need to work on mechanics here, or whatever else, and I find out that you're off doing something else when you could be studying, or you could be asking questions. Go to raid members or whatever else, because we all know a handful of other players that may be ahead of us, so we're right there with us. How did they do things? How have they managed to get past a certain point? So
Yeah.
I mean, there's several things that you can do that I don't see people do after the fact because they get lax or they don't want to, or there's a number of excuses.
I do want to say it's okay not to want to do that stuff, but realize you're probably not going to be as good of a player if you don't put a little bit of effort into trying to figure out how.
Even more on that, realize that if you're still in that group and you're not doing that stuff, especially after your raid leaders approach you, you're basically expecting others to put the effort in and work into it, and what you're going to cause is burnout within your group. It's a very, very big deal to not do this stuff, because there's always someone doing it for you. When your raid leader kind of explains things to you, how certain mechanics work, how your class works at certain times, they don't just know that stuff. They did the research for you, and it's going to come to you a lot slower, and it's going to come to you in a way that's probably not the best that you could have found out yourself. And it'll be harder for you to execute, likely, because you didn't learn it yourself and things like that. But there's someone who's going to do it for you when you don't do it yourself. And you really don't want to put that on the rest of your group. It can happen here and there. Sometimes something slips through the crack or something like that. But you really should strive to not force especially your raid leader, who's really busy, and they're trying to learn their own class, honestly.
Yeah.
So you really want to take that kind of effort off of them. But it could also be other people in your group, maybe your co-healer or your co-tank or something like that. You're forcing them to do stuff for you and things like that. And that's really what's happening. There's no other way to put it, because it has to be done to complete the fight. every single fight. You're always going to have a certain amount of responsibility to be consistent as a player, and if you don't know how to be consistent, you constantly make mistakes and stuff like that on the same mechanic constantly because you just don't know it or you don't know how your class interacts with it. Um, by the time you figure it out, it's usually because other people have helped you figure it out.
Yeah.
If you didn't go out and do it yourself.
And I've had that exact same thing happen to a friend of mine who used to be our tank for the longest time. I was friends with him, played SWTOR with him. I've known this kid, you know, he's right down the road from me. Great guy in person or whatever. Known him for 5 years, and we ended up cutting basically our friendship off because I ended up having to kick him from the raid team because he was holding everybody else back. And he was that type of person where he would come to me or he would come to my now main tank all the time, and we would literally tell him how to play his class every night. And it's like, no, like we can't do this. You're not putting in any effort, and that's my thing as a raid leader is I'm not going to spoon feed you, and I'm not going to sugarcoat anything for you. Go figure it out. Do some legwork first, and then I'll help you. Like I don't mind helping, but I'm not just gonna feed it all to you either. Um, and you know that's kind of I don't see that mentality too much, honestly, but I know it's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you just go and punch your mic? I mean,
Sorry, man. Yeah.
Because it upset. It's very much
It's upsetting me, man. It's upsetting me.
It's very much a raid leader quality, but you don't have to be a raid leader to have that stuff. But you should strive to be at that. Like that's what the raid leader is trying to push from the group. It's like every time you make the raid leader's job easier, and to the point where he's almost just a regular player, and all he's really doing is managing the group, keeping them at that same level. That's like the best place for a raid leader and a group to be at, really. The raid leader is very driven to ensure that the fight is done and the goals of the group are met. And that sometimes means that they have to spoon feed individual players, but it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost of the frustration and burnout coming up, slower progression speed, and more frustrating progression. And if you do it enough times, like sometimes stuff slips through the cracks, and I more than understand it. It happens to me even, and I hope that other people would call me on that kind of stuff as well. And that's understandable, and that's why we do this kind of help each other learn each other's class. But when it's about everything, and it almost seems like an expectation that people will tell you how to do stuff, or you don't realize that people are telling you how to do stuff because of their research, that's when it becomes a really big problem for a player. And you have to understand that you don't go into a fight unless there are no kill videos or anything out there. You don't go into a fight and just learn it from that way. Like people are doing research and they're telling you how to do those fights and everything, and that's really important to note because those world progression groups, one of the big reasons they have to put so much time into actually learning these fights is because they actually are learning them from scratch with no information. If you want to raid that often each week, that's fine, but the rest of your group probably doesn't. Like most groups raid 12 hours a week is pretty average actually, I'd say, and the only way that works is if people do research. It doesn't work any other way. Then you're going to be potentially pushing for much more raid schedules to see that success come out. If you're trying to invent strategies from scratch and reinvent the wheel, research is very important to allow for a much more efficient progression curve and to avoid that burnout too.
Yeah.
well, and I think it depends on the group too, because kind of like I mean, we kind of talked about this last night and prior, but kind of how we operate is, and if you go back and if you actually watch the video that you had posted up for us,
The A3 one?
yeah, the A3 one, we sit there and talk like 10 minutes, beat the living hell out of mechanics when we're trying to theory craft and come up with different ways, and we waste a lot of time, honestly, and we've been trying to cut down on that, but that's something that we didn't have before, which I kind of wanted to bring in is more vocal players. Before it was like it was up to me and my co-lead, raid lead, and that was it. Like whatever we said went. And now it's more like we have like 4 or 5 people that'll come up and say, hey, maybe we can try it this way, this run, or do this here, do that there. Can you get your one of the things that we've been talking about recently is we asked our machinist, can you get your full opener on the 3rd leg of the manipulator before you have to pick up your your ad?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know. There's kind of gonna be 6 seconds. Okay, let's try it." And he could, but it was kind of sketchy. So there's just certain things that I really feel like people don't understand how much a raid leader has to go through. But having that vocalness and what you're or finding out how your group operates as a whole is kind of key. And I think that'll also make you a better player is working with your team. So many teams fall apart, and then you just have these onesies and twosies who think they're good, and then you test them, and they're not as good as they claim they were. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
it's
may have been a
interesting.
reason the group fell apart.
Well, and there's also the that I've seen individually extremely skilled players, much significantly more skilled than me, at playing their role, though maybe not at the raid kind of atmosphere, because obviously they weren't successful every group. You get 8 players like that together, they don't understand how to coordinate. They're all playing very selfishly. It's not the only aspect of raiding. In fact, the bigger aspect of raiding is usually how to ensure consistent execution of mechanics, and how to coordinate as a group. Know where this person's going to be at this time. Know that this person's going to dodge right at this time, and then once you're that efficient and coordinated, you see the high numbers from groups. Despite the fact that these might not be players who are even that skilled, they might just be an average player. But I would say that we had a lot of players who are we were definitely not very very skilled, and we cleared A4S as well in this tier, which was a very hard tier for a lot of members of my group. And it's just that's not the most important thing to rating. Unfortunately, it's more about being coordinated and keeping an open mind and executing those mechanics is really big.
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel like we've gone into this pretty deep so far. Do you guys have anything else that you want to say on the subject before we move on to questions?
No, I'm actually interested. I saw some of the questions, so I'm actually kind of
I don't know if
interested.
Cryo got all the questions. He might have gotten
Well,
all the
cryo's
questions.
slacking, so
Yeah, I got a couple of
Can I
questions here.
can I point out one thing that Blizzana mentioned it a while ago when he was
Sure.
talking about it? I just want to point out one thing that like some people are very much against DPS meters and things like that, but with FF logs are up, your performance is often going to be on display now, and people can search you up and things like that. So very important. So if you're against DPS meters, it's very important to note that you are usually under a DPS meter all the time. So you may be better for you to understand where you're at. I mean, I understand there's limitations with PS4 and PS3 players and things like that, but you might want to know where you are because other people will, regardless of what you do at this
Yeah.
point.
I mean, and also another thing with FF logs, and we harp on this every time.
Yeah.
The people at the top of FF logs got there because they had
Yeah, and
7 other people making them get to the top of FF logs.
That-
It wasn't because they're they're a good player, but they are a good player supported to get to the top of FF
Yeah,
logs.
and that's not what I'm too much focusing on because I'm not talking about like being the top or where you sit in the list of meter. It's more about where you were given your situation. People can reverse engineer that and understand what it was. And it's like you're in a Thornton group and you have a group that has all the classes that buff you, and your clear time was at this time, and you can dig in and see exactly what the person did in great detail. And yeah, it's not about where you sit or anything. It's just like the information about how you play your classes is becoming more and more public. That's so just kind of be aware of this kind of stuff that you can't really you can't hide from it if that was your goal ever is to hide from it, or if you're uncomfortable with people watching you because you play any kind of content with someone who's running ACT and those logs are going to likely be up, especially
Yeah.
with Thornton.
Well, and something for what I love about FF Logs and kind of the next step that they've taken it to is that I love the utility of what FF Logs has to offer as a raid leader. If we struggled one night, like take RAS3 this last week, it was probably our worst AS3 clear that we've done, period. Even since our first one, and you can go back and you can have basically a Madden play-by-play of where people were standing, what they were using, what was going on at that exact moment where people died. And that's valuable information, at least as a raid leader to me.
Yep.
to know exactly what was going on, because sometimes people don't know. You ask them, it's like, hey, what happened? I don't know. I got atrophy. Well, how the hell did you do that? You know?
No.
So,
Yeah. Just and also it's very important that you make it so you don't often you don't make your raid leader go in there too often, kind of thing is what it is. Like you don't want your have to force your raid leader to do that very often.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move into questions now and see what we can get into here. And if you guys have any questions, this is your time to ask. We'll stop asking questions. We don't have a lot here right now, but if we go over all the questions and we have no more, then we'll probably just go on to the closing part of the show. But I do want to get as many of these out as we can. And Cryo's out there collecting them, I know for sure. I was just messing with you, Cryo. All right, so Alice Fate, question. My group's Dark Knight had an idea of locking the raids behind proving grounds. Like, you can't reach a certain level in proving grounds to queue up for raids. What do you think of that? Like, you had to reach a certain level in the proving grounds to queue up for certain raids like Savage. What do you think of locking content behind that?
honestly, that's never going to work in this game. I don't think it's too terrible of an ideal, but it's not going to work in this game because they're going to make it too lax, period. Um, the thing that I was kind of upset about was the whole, and I think Alice has kind of the same mindset, is the whole talk about um, them bringing Gobtwines into Void Ark and stuff too early because it wasn't the catch up patch, even though that's what they called it, or the talks about nerfs to AS3 because that was kind of the wall and they were unsatisfied with the amount of people that were down in the continent at the time. Honestly, like what us as raiders have been asking for is harder content. I mean, when you go back and look at Final Coil, all Final Coil was down in a week. Like, that's pathetic. I mean, granted, it's by world first groups, and you're going to have people that are going to be struggling on it regardless. But it's I my kind of like envision when they brought the whole story in and kind of what they had said and what I was hoping that they were going to stick to is that the whole reason for the story mode and savage mode was so that the people who weren't doing progression rating could still get the story of it because they were locked out of that in coils until Echo. They couldn't get the lore and stuff, and that's what they wanted. That was my idea when they said that, was like, okay, now there's a clear separation between progression rating and people who just want the story. If you just want the story, that's fine with me, but don't go into Savage and complain about it being too hard or whatever else. That's kind of my issue on it. And when they start talking about nerfs and stuff, to me it's infuriating because I've never believed in nerfing classes or nerfing content, period.
There are changes, I believe, that you need to make for things that are not working as the developers intended them to work.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean,
not
like,
nerfing
making it
it
easier
around.
just to make it easier for a select few people, or like people who are just hitting that wall and can't get through it. I guess that would also depend on the population too and who's playing it. Like, if 90% of the population can't get through certain content, although they're trying their hardest, then yeah, or maybe make content that will actually make it a little bit more of a ramp instead of a 90-degree angle and difficulty. Because that's kind of how it was going from AS2 to AS3. Because when people were done with that, they were like, this isn't, it's a trash boss. You're going through all this stuff and you're fighting trash, and there was nothing really difficult. You're just figuring out a strategy to get around it. When you get A3S, it's a DPS check, which wasn't really a big issue in A2S because there's all AoE stuff and figuring that up, and that doesn't apply to the next fight. And so since there's no stepping stone, it made it hard for a lot of people to transition because people playing the game are just kind of just playing the game, right? They're not
Yeah.
thinking about it. I do agree that A3S is a really, really great fight, and I don't think they need to nerf it. I just think that they need to introduce that kind of mechanics a little bit better than, or that kind of difficulty a little bit better than how they did introduce it.
Well, and kind of to piggyback off of what you were saying, and sorry to cut you off,
No, okay.
but um, You know, I kind of agree with that. I mean, if you go back and look at the old content, you know, the coils and stuff, it was more of that ramp up. Whereas you get, you know, A1, basically the same fight. Ooh, resin puddle stayed there. You know, prey markers and stuff like that.
I thought
Whatever.
A1 was done. I'm going to be honest. I think that was a good start to Savage. I
Yeah,
think they
well,
did that right.
yeah, it was a decent start. Like it didn't have too many extra mechanics or whatever. It wasn't really that much tougher as far as damage going out. So, you know, that was a good start. And then you had A2, which was like just time based. Like, could you kill shit fast enough, or could you kill certain targets at certain times? Um, it is your
The
Godwalker
rise of
doing?
the Summoner almost with that turn. It was kind of silly.
Well, I'm not gonna pick on any classes
All
because
right.
I kind of like it as a scholar where I can go in there and just bane fucking everything. Like I enjoy that, but you know, as a fight for content, like it just really wasn't appealing to me. And then yeah, you get into three and it's like bam in your face. This is like 10 times the difficulty level of the other two. And then even now getting into A4 where there's nowhere near the difficulty and mechanics in A4. It's more like DPS and healing and tanking checks than anything, in my opinion, anyway. Um, from what I've seen, is like, yeah, there was a huge jump there, and I think that was kind of like, okay, the ones that were good enough could climb the ladder, but we just kind of kicked it off at the end and said too too bad, you know,
Hmm.
or you know, get better and build a new ladder so you can get over the wall. And a lot of people just didn't do that, and that's I think that's where people have kind of just fallen off. And I really I agree. Like they shouldn't have made like a 90-degree angle. Um, in the content, but I also don't believe that it's necessarily a bad thing. You know, that should be fuel for the fire to get them to push harder through content and their classes.
All right.
Can you actually repeat the question that we were answering? I don't, because I was actually interested in the question. I
Uh,
think we went off on a tangent.
no, it's just saying. So my group's DK Dark Knight had an idea about locking raids behind proving grounds.
I
Like
see.
you
Okay.
had to do a certain level in proving
Yeah.
grounds to get into Savage.
Yeah. So I had comments about that. I just there's no it's just basically there's no reason to lock raids behind anything outside of maybe cure. But this is things you do with a static usually, you know. Unless duty finder is the only place where those kind of restrictions play a role, and even then, people with less gear and with less achievements should be allowed to enter these fights and potentially show their stuff at any time. And it should be at the choice of the people bringing them in the group, not by something that the system pretty much enforces. So that's like kind of my opinion around that. But the proving grounds are good because maybe they can give you, like, you know, people can make their own choices about it. It's like, how far have you gotten in the trainer, whatever they called it, the beginner's trainer hall or whatever, it was something like
Yeah.
that. How far have you gotten in there? What are the metric, like if this is what it's going to be, because they have DPS meters in PvP, so I assume it's going to be something similar, potentially. But it's like, how far have you gotten? What have you achieved in this and stuff like that? And that's just going to be a piece that some may choose to use. It depends how good it is of gauging, and that's really just the choice of the group and everything. FF Logs does a good enough job on its own at the moment. It's just not many people know about how to upload their logs or anything like that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it should be the choice of the player, is where
I
it should be.
think I can see it kind of going into that situation to where, you know, their beginner's hall or proving grounds or however it would be would say, hey, they would try to highlight certain points of your job. And they say, all right, well, in order for you to pass this, you have to be using these abilities. And then it kind of goes in steps, and you have to use this ability to pass this level, this ability to pass this level, and you have to kind of figure it out. And at the very end, you have to make use of all of the different skills and abilities your class job has in order to beat that last bit of content. And I feel like that would be interesting as long as it was on a level that everyone could do. It wasn't something that was like you have to be a good player. You just have to have an understanding of your job to complete it, not just be really, really good at what you're doing. But that would be really hard to balance out because if you make it way too difficult, then why you're basically rating, you're solo rating, and
Well,
I don't know.
its focus should be on training the player. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that it can. I think it could really be anything, just however players choose to interpret it. As far as bringing players to groups and stuff like that, that is something that's up to them. I think it's just more along the lines of how public do you want the results to be, kind of thing. Which is going to be public for the most part, or at least you should be able to request it from the player if you want to know something about it. So, but it's just an additional set of content, though.
Well, I mean, they could kind of do it like FFlogs does it now anyways. They could give you the ability to set it to private or public anyway. So
Yep. Maybe if they want to, yeah. Yeah, I think it's all around, like, that's a player decision. I think some communities and some servers might decide to use that if it's very public, depending on how it turns out, and if it is actually a decent way of determining how players are doing. And others might just not care about it at all. It's like, you don't have to do that stuff. We'll just use FF logs. It's good enough for us right now. So, yeah.
I'm just
I want the
interested
players
see-
to have the choice. Yeah, I am interested to see what it is as well. Honestly.
Well, I'm not only interested to see that, I'm interested to see how people actually use it per server, because there's already this stigma behind parsers and stuff like that. People are really kind of skeptical of giving out their numbers or really doing a parse for people. Especially when they're looking for raid groups, and that's something that I do as a raid leader, is like, look, if I'm bringing you into a role, I expect you to do X number in X amount of gear, or pretty close to it.
And that's that's something that FF logs is really good about, is because it's not just showing your numbers, it's showing everything that happened around your numbers, including your comp, your fight, the duration of the fight, how you use those abilities, what happened during the fight. You can vet your raid leader, because I know a lot of tanks that have come to me for recruiting, and their DPS is at a weird state. And I'm like, and tanks DPS is something that's really hard to measure because it depends on healers and your co-tank and your strategy. So when I see numbers at a certain range, I go and investigate them. Like, okay, he has to be in his tank stance a lot more often than I would have thought. And then when I go talk to the player, I can be like, does your group force you to be in tank stance very often? And he's like, yeah, they do. I want to push harder though. And it's like, I can see that you're trying your best, And that's where, like, you can kind of vet a smart raid leader, because a raid leader that just goes in and says your DPS isn't like in the top 10 or something stupid like that, then I can't bring you in. And then it's just like, that's why FF logs is probably your best bet for protecting how you're actually performing as a player, because it gives a history of your progression. It gives a history of what actually happened on the parses that you have. So,
Okay.
and you'll know if it's a good raid leader who's looking at them.
Well, it's not even just raid league, but as far as players, like, it's a good way. Well, a semi-good way, because we all know, there's people out there that are really kind of, padding their numbers and stuff with certain group makeups and sacrificing some, people in their group to make their numbers better. Which, whatever, people are going to do it
It's fun.
regardless. They did it for a while
That's
or
not,
whatever.
and to be honest, that's not easy to do too. It's really interesting. It's just only good in that world. It's like, how do I get the highest parse on this class? And I'm very curious about it. I love watching it. I might even try doing it sometimes with different people in my group. But it's a really interesting piece of content, honestly.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I was getting to is that, like, with my group, my guys are really, really competitive amongst ourselves and amongst
I
other
see.
people, and so we see numbers, and it's like, hey, we've got to beat it. Like, push harder somehow. Can I drop tank stance here? Me and my tanks will talk, and we'll try to figure out, hey, can you sacrifice? Because I mean, like in A3, one of the things that we started trying to do was letting our Dark Knight, because he wanted to fit in some more DPS in last phase. I was like, well, honestly, for 90% of last phase, I'm going to have DPS down, so I'll just heal the whole time. I don't care about my numbers. I'm only going to do at most like 400 there. If I had really, pushed out some DPS, if I just do half of that, and I can heal you through it, then your DPS increase is going to be more than me putting in, because I have that DPS down. So, just certain things like that, and I really feel like you said, some raid leaders really not only hold back people that they're bringing in, but hold back the people that are currently on their teams as well when they want to try to kind of push content.
Okay.
Yeah, you set realistic goals. Yeah.
I feel like we've gone on a little bit of a tangent, but I hope that answered your question,
We
Alice.
answered the question and started talking about something else.
We got into a really.
We only did that twice.
Yeah.
We're all raid leaders, passionate about this.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
we all think about these things, and why I like having you guys on the show. We have a good conversation about it. Even if it, I think in the end, you should kind of the goal. Want all the players to kind of realize is shoot for the stars and land on the moon at least, right? Good advice for everything in life, even in raiding and DPS. So, all right. So the next question is by NY Werven King. Does playing the game casually mean that you don't spend time to read tooltips? Why is there always a connection between playtime and skill? I believe that's what that says. Okay, so playing casual is kind of not an excuse for not knowing what you're doing, but if you want to be a good player, you can't just say, "Hey, I'm casual, so I don't have to read tooltips, but I'm a good player." No, that doesn't make any sense. But people can play the game however they want. If you don't enjoy playing the game, what's the point in playing the game? And a lot of people who play the game want to be better, and there's extremely good reasons to read tooltips because of that. But if you don't enjoy the game to be a better player overall and do more DPS, yeah, you gotta read tooltips, man. But if you don't do all that stuff and you don't care, all right, that's fine. You're not going to be in my raid group, though.
Yeah, I think the concept of casual would be that you do it at your own pace. You do it at your own pace that works for you. You don't have as much time to put into learning it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can be less efficient with your time. If anything, it means you should be more efficient with your time and reading those tooltips as you can. Like, if basically you're going to progress through things very slowly, you're going to be very behind because of the level of commit you put into certain aspects of the game, and it might be you're casual at playing your battle roles as opposed to something else. Mm-hmm. And it's still, while you play those roles, you do want to use the time to drive to be better at them. Otherwise, it's hard to understand what you're gaining or what your enjoyment is from that class. It's really it's very hard to understand what else you would want out of playing that role. So yeah, it's that's the interesting thing.
I mean, in playing the game,
yeah, you're playing a game, but you're trying to change what the game is.
If you don't read the tooltips, okay. So again, if you don't read tooltips and you're playing the game, what are you just clicking buttons? Are you just like, well, this might do this. I just don't understand. Like, when you're playing a game and you don't actually read what you're doing, it's like playing any game. Okay, so left clicks to shoot. I just left click. I don't really know why. I guess it just worked out somehow. I figured out you gotta understand what you're doing.
It's pretty much like, you don't go around saying that you're not a casual player. You say, I'm a casual player, so I'm going to learn stuff very slowly. I don't know what all my skills do, but I'm working towards that. If you say that you're not working towards that, if people are gonna, understand that people are gonna perceive you as the way you present yourself, and saying that you don't use tooltips, read your tooltips, and you just click buttons differently. It's like they're just gonna see you and be like, you don't play the same game that I play. I think you play the button clicking game where you put things. Yeah. So it's a little strange. I mean, people are allowed to do that kind of stuff if they really want to, but you understand that you're playing with other players and you might not enjoy the experience that comes from stuff like that. But I think the question was more along, is that make them casual or not, or something like that, or is it just expected casual players? Casual players can be extremely skilled players. They just take longer to get there because they have less time usually. Right? And they have less drive to do it. They really focus on maintaining a very healthy real life, or it's just a game they don't play too often. That's usually how I interpret it. And you can still be an extremely skilled casual player. I will never think that a casual player doesn't have the potential to be skilled. There's a lot of hardcore players out there who are retired, know how to do this, use their time super efficiently, 6 hours a week, and they can be very, very good players. I always understand that casual players can be very, very skilled, and potentially more skilled than me as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I always try to tell my guys, and you always have to know that someone's going to be better for you. There's never a point where you can't improve somewhere or somehow. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize that, or maybe I just don't understand their mentality, because my mentality when I'm playing a game is I want to be the very best at whatever I'm doing at it. Whereas, I've heard so many things of where I don't care, this or that. Well, I don't understand that mentality as a player. Honestly, we only raid nine hours a week, but I expect my people to show up and do 125% every night, period. Like, we'll fight through the lag or whatever else. And yeah, we have our bad nights, but that's something that I expect out of my guys. And if someone wants to be better at their class, I expect that too. If you're coming to me for help, I expect you to put in the time and effort for it, and kind of change your mentality of, oh, I work all these hours and blah blah blah, and I can't cap SOs or my tombstones and stuff. Like, you literally have to spend 20 minutes a day for 6 days to cap your SOs. Don't give me that
Yeah.
shit. Like, everybody can find time for that.
Yeah.
And it's just, I feel like too many people make excuses for why they're put in certain labels, I guess, whether they're mid-core or casual hardcore or casual whatever. Is just quit making excuses. If you want to be a better player, you have to stop making excuses. You have to learn how to take criticism. You have to really realize, what's good and bad criticism, and you have to learn on your own. I mean, those are main things that you have to pick up on. And yeah, it's silly to me. Like, I just don't understand that mentality at all.
Yeah.
No.
Generally for me, the advice for being a good player is the same across all levels. It's just how much time you put into it and how fast you want to get to a certain point is all about whether or not you're going at the game casually or hardcore, but you're still striving for the same goals potentially at the same, if you're tackling the same content. So if it's crafting or raiding, if you're going at casual raiding, you're going to go through raiding a lot slower. There's a lot more shortcuts you can take to more efficiently use your time. If you're going at more hardcore, you're going to have to put a lot more time into the game, and you're going to have less opportunities for shortcuts. It's going to be a lot harder at the time of, and things like that, But you're still shooting for the same thing in the end, right? Even if you don't get the opportunity to actually execute on some of the stuff you're shooting for, because maybe, like nerfs and stuff like that, if we're talking about raiding and things like that, you're still shooting for it. It's like, what if these nerfs weren't here? Now that I know how to do this, I'm at this point where I'm able to clear it with nerfs. Let's start to take away some of the concepts of nerfs. Like, how can I improve myself more and more and more? Yeah, like it's what a game. It's an interesting concept, because it's like, this is what a game is, right? Like, a game is figuring out how to complete the game, follow the rules of the game, learn how to play them, and get better at it. And then you can't, why play a game just to say you're good at it if you play the game like if you're not playing the game correctly? Like, it's up to you to understand whether or not the game you're doing, if the game is like, if you're doing it correctly or not, right? Like, you should be seeking for that and seeing that feedback. For sure.
Yeah, I want to. Greed was saying something in here about being the very best. I want everybody to sit here and take a second. When you start up and you get like encouraged and you want to go out there and try and learn your class, put on that Pokemon song. Just play it in your head, and just make sure you go out there and you want to be the very best. All right, just do it. All right, and so another thing that I thought was pretty funny that I saw Barbaron say, and it's kind of related to some of the comments we had. I just want to say it because I thought it was funny. So, he goes and he buys the furniture from IKEA, but he's not going to read the instructions. He paid for it. He doesn't have to build it the way he wants. Why read tooltips? He uses tooltips everywhere he wants. He pays $15 a month to use the tooltips however he wants. So
I absolutely hate that excuse. I pay for the game, so I play it the way I want. Yeah, okay, I get that.
but don't play with me.
Yeah,
I mean, that's it. Yeah.
but don't come to me expecting you to play the way that you want if you're playing badly, and I expect something differently. Like, the token goes both ways.
I think we were all kind of thinking. I mean, I was thinking of one too. I was like thinking, like, you pick up, and a Rubik's Cube is like a game, right? And then you can say you're really good at a Rubik's Cube, but all you do is you take it and then smash it with a hammer, and that's how you consider solving it. And then
You take it apart, put it back together.
or you just smash it. That's how you play. So you're smashing the Rubik's Cube, and it's like, I'm really good at a Rubik's Cubes. I can do them really well, and that's how the game is.
I bought the Rubik's Cube.
And then you go to other people and say, I'm really good at a Rubik's Cubes, and they're like, oh, cool. How fast can you solve it, and how many moves? And it's like, oh, I just do this.
And then they just walk away from you, and you're done.
Understand that other people may not perceive you as someone they might want to interact with, and it's an MMO, which has lots of other people, and it's very important that it's all about interacting with people, right?
Yeah. All right, all right. So let's go on a little bit more. Let's get into a couple of these questions that I thought were a little bit funny. Actually, you know what? I don't know if this one's funny, or I'm pretty sure it's just a jab at you. They were wondering why you're so bad, Blizz.
That
Nahira
was
was. Yeah.
that was Nahira, and I've already answered that. Hashtag Scholar God.
Yeah,
Enough
there you
said.
go. Enough said. All right. Snuggle asked, when did Shiloh LaBeouf get on the show? I'm assuming they were talking about you, Blizz.
Huh?
Really?
Wait, what?
I think so,
Because
right?
of the
Wait, no,
face
no.
shape?
What was the
Yeah.
Is
what
it?
was the question? Because
Yeah. Well,
all I
when
heard
did Shiloh LaBeouf get on the show?
uh,
And so I think that was directed at you, man. That was from Snuggle Thug.
so,
I
well,
looked. I thought about that. I was like, who is that? I was like, I bet that's Blizz. Dude,
Yeah.
do you just do it thing? Just do it. Just do it.
no,
Okay, I
I'm-
can't get
I'm
No
into
one
it.
wants. No one wants that label, Frosty.
no,
Oh,
no.
come on. Mac from Always Sunny.
Oh, no, don't start the Shia LaBeouf stuff. No.
Shiloh Blizz.
Are you sure you want to keep coming on the show?
Oh gosh, this is good.
See,
Keep
this
it
this is
going.
exactly why Frosty's ratings went down. So.
Oh, because I was making fun of Blizz. No. All right. So, anyways, let's. The other question we have, real quick, about the show is from Rin Ha V. He kept asking about when the healer show is going to be. We're planning to be at the very beginning of January. I'm not exactly sure who's going to be on the show. Kerr should be hosting it. And I'm planning to get a couple of people on the show, but there's a lot of people to choose from, and there's some people I have in mind for it, but I need strong confirmations on that before we get into that. But we'll see, and I also have to find out for sure, depending on who I get on the show, will be how I format the show, whether it's going to be just a White Mage show or a White Mage Scholar show or all three show. But we'll find out for sure. But yeah, look forward to that at the beginning of January. Okay, so we're done with questions here. We're getting into closing. Do you guys have any points or anything that you want to bring up before we close the show out?
As usual, I'm just trying to drive people to be more motivated to enjoy the game more and to be better at the game. So a lot of the stuff is very opinionated in the stuff I do, and I can't guarantee that it'll work for everyone. But I'm always up for the conversation. So at any point you want to contact me in game on Diablos or on my stream whenever I'm streaming, go for it. I'm really open to hearing what people think about what I've said. It'll help me give better advice in the future. So that's yeah.
Blizz?
Yeah, I'm the same way. You know, if I have my stream up, you want to come by and ask me a question or talk about something in general and have a debate on it, as long as it doesn't get out of hand, I'm all for it. You can contact me on Exodus, if you ever need any help with anything, whether it be, me to fill in or one of my guys to fill in, or just, again, to talk, to answer Cryo. Cryo, I've already told Frosty that he probably doesn't want me on the healer show because I'm a scholar and White Mage is solo heal GG. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the end of my healing
Well,
talk on there. But
yeah, and yeah, guys, please follow these guys. They're awesome people. I'm glad I had you guys on the show today, and also just to make sure that I want everyone to kind of nail this into their head. This show is about people who are trying to improve themselves, and they may know everything, but it'd be nice to kind of revisit some of these thoughts when you're out there doing content and you're out there doing things. Just kind of revisit the thoughts that we talked about, and maybe you'll figure out something that you didn't know before. And also, a lot of people don't want to go through this extra effort. That's perfectly fine. You play the game however you want to. I'm just out here to say, hey guys, this is how you could do better if you wanted to go out in that direction. So don't try to say, oh, this is some elitist thing trying to tell me. No, we're giving you basic knowledge to be a better player if you want to take it. And that's what I want a lot of MogTalk to start being about, is out there going over details about how to play the game, how to be better, and enjoy the game more. And also, do you guys want to do any quick shout-outs to anybody before we get off air?
sure. Shout out to Lion on Exodus, if any of y'all are in there.
I don't know why I'm doing this, but Nahira, I'll shout out to you too, since you were over there begging
Oh.
about it, even though you want to be a troll. But those are my guys. You know, he's my tank. Yuli as well, who's in chat trolling away. So shout out to those guys. Shout out to you, Frosty, and thank you for having me on the show again. I
Yeah, of
appreciate
course.
it, even though it was short notice and I was kind of complaining.
It's okay. You were the one who got on the show by saying, "Hey, I've never on the show." So it's your own fault, man.
Yeah.
Your own fault.
No, I love being on the show. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
You
why I
don't
was
okay.
like, man, I haven't heard anything back for like 3 months now, and I put another application back in back when you were
Man.
talking about Saturdays being a thing.
Well, we're gonna have you on again for our regular show. So you already know you're on that one, right?
Whenever you decide to have that
A
one.
month from now, we'll probably have it. There
Well,
we go.
yeah.
I'll remind you. We'll go over details with it.
It's
everything.
always fun that like a couple days before the show, I'm like, "Hey Frosty, who's going on the show with me?" And Frosty's like, "I don't know. It might just be you and me. Might just be you and me. I'm
Might
trying
just
to
be
confirm
us."
it." And I'm like, "Okay, okay."
Yeah.
And then we always get someone though.
Yeah, we get somebody on here. It depends. There's a lot of people who it's hard to kind of get commitments that far in the future, and sometimes it's hard to get commitments that soon in the future. So it's always a balance game. But we can get some really awesome people on the show, and I'm trying to get everyone. I think we've gotten a lot of people in the community, on the Twitch community, on the show so far. There's only like a handful of people we haven't gotten on. If you guys have suggestions for anyone, Snuggle, again, clarify that you're talking about Blizz right now, about being Shiloh LaBeouf. I'd really appreciate that. But no, like I want to get, if you guys have suggestions for people you want to see on the show, shoot that to me in Twitch message or email or anything else. And I'll love to have you on there. We can talk about whatever. I mean, you guys don't have to be the very best player in the game, but you know, have something to talk about and have an idea of what you're talking about, and I would have a lot of fun having you on here. I plan to also have more, every once in a while, kind of have more of a casual stream where we just kind of talk about various other topics too. So, okay, so I want to do my shout outs real quick. I want to thank all the people who watched the show today. You guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you, Ark, and thank you, Blizz, for being on the show and providing such great content for us today. I think this was a really good discussion. Thank you for those that are subscribed on Patreon. I appreciate that. And I also want to make sure I thank Blizz again here for the artwork he's done. If you guys see the logo in the bottom left, he created that MOG logo there. And he also spruced up our overlay and made it look a ton better than what it looked like before. And I'm really enjoying all that. So thanks for that, Blizz.
Not to self-promote, but I do commissions.
Yeah, he does do commissions. If you guys want to reach out for him, please reach out to him for any kind of work that you'd like to have done. Thank you, Cryo, for gathering questions tonight. I really, really appreciate you gathering those questions today. It was awesome to have you in there. I know Kerr's kind of out with family stuff for now, so it was good for you to step in. And I mean, Cryo, you can step in all you want and answer questions. I'm sure Kerr would appreciate that too. But all right, so to go on, I also, you know, before we leave, I never get to say it as much, but I do want to thank everyone who did follow the show too. Everyone who is supporting the show in any way. I don't do follow alerts or anything else during the show because I don't believe that it's good to derail the show with those. So there's no alerts, whether you donate or anything. I don't even have donations available for anyone, but if you put anything for the stream, we don't have any alerts for it because I feel like it needs to be focused on the show. The next show will be next Saturday, December 19th at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, and 2200 GMT for the guys who go off GMT. We'll be discussing on how to make Party Finder actually work in your favor. And, you know, I don't want to say exactly who is going to be on that show for the same reasons that I don't usually, because I don't have solid confirmations on it. But we'll find out for sure. I do plan to have a really good, interesting conversation because I think that a lot of people don't take Party Finder as seriously as they could. And especially people who go out there, lead raids, and do other things, you can use Party Finder to make a lot of things work. And you can have just as interesting of an experience with Party Finder as you do with Duty Finder, and they're on your server, and you can interact with them all the time. You'll weed out all the bad players, and so when you're finding new people to play with, you'll know who's good and bad. But that leads into other things, and we'll get into that topic next week. If you guys have any questions for the show, you want to help with the show, you have anything else, we have links in there for joining the show, we have links in there for questions for the show. And I guess we need to find somebody here to host. Do you guys have anyone in particular that you care for us to host?
I'm gonna have to look.
Take a look here, see if there's anyone here you want to host. I kind of have someone that I'm thinking about that I might want to host, just because a lot of people aren't familiar with them, but he was in the stream here earlier. Maybe I shouldn't host him because, he left us, right? He left the stream.
Man, why'd he leave?
Yeah.
I guess he had to if he was gonna stream.
Yeah. Snuggle, I'm glad you're having a good time. Did we get a confirmation from her who she thought was Shyla? She said you, right?
I don't know. I don't know who Snuggle's talking about, but I'm pretty sure Snuggle's talking
Oh,
about.
talking about me?
Well, Snuggle said you, but
No, it can't be me. I don't look like Shia LaBeouf. I look like 10 times more handsome.
what? Shia LaBeouf doesn't have a red beard either, but whatever.
Do I have a red beard?
It looks red on cam anyway.
It's like brown. It's very light. Like, I don't have like a beard that goes really strong. But anyways, yeah, everybody should go out there and work to be a better player and just do it. I can't do it that well, but there you go. There's your week. Just do it. Did you guys find somebody yet?
I guess you were looking at Axeman, weren't you?
I was actually looking at Teddy.
Oh.
Teddy, Final Fantasy 14. You said
Where the hell is
Axeman?
Yeah, Axeman's on.
Axeman streaming?
Yeah.
Oh, what is he streaming? I didn't know he was streaming.
A1S Trap is what he said.
Okay.
Is he still going?
I think
Maybe.
he is. Let me check and open his stream real quick.
Yeah, he's still going.
All right. So yeah, guys, we've had him on the show before. Ottawa. I don't know why he doesn't have his cam up. He bought a cam. He should be on his camera. But anyways, Axeman Games. He's streaming right now. He's in Elysium. He's a pretty good machinist. So if you watch my show because you like machinists, you'll probably like him as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and give him a shout out, and we're gonna host him. If you guys are okay with that.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Snuggle, I'm sorry. I'm not good. I'm not a good Shyla. I'm not a great Shyla at all.
I hate that you brought that up because now I'm not gonna be able to live
Shyla
down
the
this
Blizz is
thing.
great.
Yeah, now I'm gonna be Shyla Blizz with my raid group, and it's gonna suck. But whatever.
It's worth it. It's worth it. It's great entertainment for me, and I don't care if it carries on for the rest of your life.
I'm sure.
Okay, let's get a host out here. We'll do like 15 seconds of awkward waving here. Let's do 15 seconds of awkward waving real quick. And then I'm going to move the show over to like something else. Just do it! No, that was probably too loud. Maybe I'm scaring the dogs. All right, there's our awkward waving, guys. I'm going to switch over to our intro screen real quick for a transition going. Oh, Electric, it's just a VLC logo. There we go. Thank you guys all for showing up. We'll see you next time.